Something has,
11.
well, 11, it looks like we could see 16 if there were 16, yeah.
That's interesting.
More hands for you to deal with.
Yeah. Oh, Zoom must have updated or something. I updated my iPad a couple of days ago. I don't know if that's what did this. Okay, so we're missing birds. I apologize. I'll get started in just a moment. I lost my agenda here.
Are you saying you have a hidden agenda?
Yes. I hope I had my agenda here. And I mistakenly closed it. All right, well, good morning, everyone. It's 9:31. I will call the meeting to order. Hopefully, oh, there's Councillor Journal now. We are not, I understand, expecting to see Councillor McGrath today. So I'll call the meeting to order. And councillors, you have today's agenda in front of you. I'll ask if there are any additions or changes to the agenda. Mr. Greathead, go ahead.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. I have two items that I'd like to add to the agenda under in camera. One is just a staffing update, and the second is a legal matter. And they're just for advisement. I don't believe there's going to be any deliberation coming out of that, so it's just more of an update for Council.
It's so it was two items, and I'm sorry, repeat for me again what they were.
A staffing update or a labor item, and a legal matter.
Okay, so we'll call it a human resources matter and a legal matter, and we will place those as item 13.1 and 13.2 in closed session, and that will move adjournment to item 14.
Thank you.
Anything further? Very good. Then could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Kelleher MP, thank you very much. All in favor? Good, thank you very much. Councillors, you have in front of you the minutes from the November 10th Committee of the Whole meeting. Are there any questions around that or changes required to those minutes? Mayor Ireland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. It's a very minor item perhaps, but looking at the minutes, they are the minutes of November 10th, and we're dealing with them on November 24th. And under presentations, there is the concluding sentence that says presentations can be found in today's agenda package. And so I wonder whether it might be more accurate to just give a date. As I say, the minutes reflect November 10th, but they are attached to November 24th. document for review. So rather than saying today's agenda package, if we just got in the practice of saying they would be found in the agenda package for a date, it seems it would be clearer to the public. As I say, a bit minor, maybe everybody can figure it out, but an observation.
Right, thank you. And I recall that this has come up before and caused a little bit of confusion. So I think this would just be a casual, not even direction, suggestion to administrations, just how those items should be recorded. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes, that's all I'm suggesting. I don't take issue with the minutes at all.
Sure. Ms. Byrne, any comment on that, or you just take that as it stands?
No, that's easy for me to do.
Good. All right, thank you very much. So noted. Anything further, councillors? There being nothing further, could we have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented? Councillor Wilson, thank you. All in favor? Very good. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm having technical issues with the agenda. That moves us to agenda item number 5, presentations. We have 2 presentations today. First concerns annual membership with AMPPE, and the second from the Skate Park Committee. Do we have presenters from both of those groups with us right now?
Good morning.
Mr. Day, hello, good morning. Well, thank you very much. Welcome. Is Ms. Harkson also joining us?
I'm uncertain if she's able to.
All right. Well, we had both names on our agenda, but that's fine. So we're ready for you, and thank you for joining us this morning, and please proceed.
So just for clarification, we were asked probably pre-COVID just to explain the membership for the municipality. Is that still where we are?
I myself am unaware, but yes, I think we're happy to hear any context and explanation you'd like to offer.
Well, for a brief history of AMPPE, the organization started out of necessity through actions that Parks Canada was taking, I would say regionally and nationally, that had direct impacts on our communities. We felt that at that time that there would be a stronger voice if we could have a collective of Banff and Jasper, Lake Louise, and the interests that lie there to best promote responsible use of the national parks. And we've gone through many incarnations about working with Parks Canada and then more adversarially. We've had lots of challenges with NGOs who in general want to take opportunities away from Canadians and visitors in the national parks. And I think just recently we just saw again a unilateral decision made by Parks Canada locally, removing one of the winter offers and doing it in such a way that lacked consultation, was an 11th hour pull of an opportunity that we've had, has been promoted by Parks Canada. And rather than letting anyone else have an opportunity to set something up for the winter, they simply removed it. And this would be referring specifically to the track setting at Pyramid Lake. Originally that was given as an opportunity for locals because of other ski areas in the park being removed. And rather than letting the community know what was happening, they simply just pretended it disappeared. And through movements from AMPPE, I know that the partnership initiative heard about it, the Chamber of Commerce heard about it, but it was really an unfortunate way to unfold a communication program. And this is where AMPPE views these, when you look at it collectively, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. And It's like saying you could have a golf course, but you can't step on the grass. You can have a golf course, but you can't use golf balls. So you kind of get the idea that you're allowed to do things, but as soon as you try to actually do them, either there's a decision being made that's not communicated, or there's another underlying policy that's being masked under possibly an operational issue. So AMPPE is in that position of broad-based advocacy. We employ one person essentially to be our communication director, that's Debbie. And then we have consultants in Edmonton and Ottawa who can get doors open for us. And that way we can have conversations at higher levels when needed. The majority of the budget for AMPPE is paid by Banff Lake Louise Tourism and then by individual memberships. Tourism Jasper pays into it as well. And we feel that as a municipality, joining, we can then, AMPPE can take a collective voice further without necessarily representing any one given place. And we can talk more broadly about national park ideas and responsible use, and just continue to put pressure on to keep it aware that Canadians and visitors will appreciate their parks a lot more if they get to experience them. Our three advocacy areas are local inclusion and park planning and decision-making, ecological integrity, and visitor experience. So we try to encourage Parks Canada to put an effort into visitor experience. We've seen positive results of that over the years, to the point where, in fact, it was Parks Canada that announced visitor experience at an AMPPE gala. So we know that we're able to influence change. And we believe that we do it greater in a collective than individually. Does anyone have any questions about AMPPE or what we do or what we've been doing?
Thanks, Mike. Questions from council? Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler, and thanks, Mike, for that presentation. I think going back, as you said, pre-COVID, the request for a presentation from AMPPE to council was simply to get more in the public domain the benefit that the municipality of Jasper could see from membership in that organization. We always are, of course, attempting to be transparent and accountable to our public. And so any expenditure of funds, including a membership and attendance at the, what used to be at least the annual gathering, were expenditures that had to be justified. And so although I appreciate the explanation you've given and the efforts that are undertaken by AMPPE directed toward particularly communities in national parks, but perhaps a bit broader than that. Can you sort of distinctly indicate the better benefit for the municipality of Jasper of membership in AMPPE?
I think the biggest benefit that we have is, with a relatively small expenditure, we can leverage that money through other groups that have vested interest as well in visitation to our communities. And that way we can afford to be in Ottawa, to have a voice at those tables where it obviously the biggest expense is labor and travel. So that way we can we don't even have an office anymore. We primarily just push everything to human resources and advocacy. And that way we feel we can have the biggest bang for the buck. So the majority of the budget is paid for by Banff Lake Louise Tourism, and they recognize that if it's just Banff Lake Louise Tourism, that it's very easy to get slotted into the lobbyist category or someone with a vested interest. Whereas what ideally AMPPE is looking to ensure that Canadians and visitors can enjoy the national parks responsibly, and there currently isn't a voice for that. They're just that area, that ecosystem needs some space to be filled, and that's where AMPPE has done that role now for 25 years.
All right, well, thank you for that. I really appreciate you being here. I'm sorry it's taken such a long time, but it's great to see you back among a bunch of councillors. Maybe this is a signal for the future. Thanks for your attendance today.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Day, you said that the majority of funding comes from Banff Lake Louise Tourism. Does Tourism Jasper contribute sort of in proportion to the size of its budget in our community, or how does that work?
How does Tourism Jasper pays a membership as well? Yes. Not to the same extent that Banff Lake Louise Tourism does, though.
So really a great majority is paid by Banff Lake Louise Tourism.
Yes, we made a presentation to Banff Lake Louise Tourism to have a funding mechanism over 3 years, I believe. And then we've just sort of tried to keep that going because it's membership based. We did make a fair bit of money off the gala organizing. Obviously that is not something that's happening anytime soon. And so we just, instead of using the galas and fundraisers, we felt, along with our other partners, that it would be better spent in focusing on advocacy rather than fundraising. And in doing that, it required a budget increase from someone who was outside of membership. So Banff Lake Louise Tourism took it upon themselves to be the primary funder. So I think that in one case, I'd say that Jasper's getting probably a very good membership rate, I think, for what we get out of it, but also understanding that Banff too wants Jasper to be involved because it takes it away from a Banff centric focus. This is national parks. This is about people visiting. This shouldn't be an opportunity that you can do in Jasper or Banff. It should be looked at more holistically. And that's where the divide and conquer technique that Parks Canada utilizes so brilliantly, we can have a wedge in there.
Sure. Yeah, I see that completely. Is the municipality of Banff or the town of Banff a member as well? Are there other municipal memberships?
Well, Lake Louise, ID9, yes, they are members. We try to have someone from ID9 on the board. It's all volunteer driven on the board. So sometimes we have somebody, sometimes we don't, but they obviously are in a similar situation outside of municipality with limited representation. So as these issues arise, we are able to address them.
I guess what I wondered is the town of Banff a member is distinct from Banff Lake Louise Tourism, or is the town of Banff essentially represented by Banff Lake Louise Tourism?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't have that budget answer, whether or not they're paying it or not. The money from Banff Lake Louise Tourism goes through the municipality.
Yeah.
So it's not, they don't run similar to how Tourism Jasper does. So I don't know the distinction.
Yeah, fair. That's a good point. There's a different kind of integration there. And lastly, do you happen to know off the top of your head what Jasper's membership fee request is, or do you not have that information?
I don't recall. I want to say somewhere around $5,000, but I don't know the exact amount. I don't know when it came up, and it seemed like a perfectly reasonable thing to have a conversation. But yeah, that was March, and so obviously, obviously, it was not nearly as important as many other things have been since then. So.
Yeah. No, we can easily put our hands on the number. So thank you very much again, councillors. Councillor Demota, please go ahead.
Thank you for presenting today, Mr. Day. It's nice to see you on the screen again. Yes, I think it would be to our benefit to be members. I've seen just from experience how important being a member of AMPPE is, and I think it's something that we should definitely look at, and seeing as that we're going into our budget discussions right now, that we have that number and then make a decision on where that will go. I believe it'll come out of council memberships and contributions. So yeah, if we can get that number soon, then it'll help us make the decisions. And thank you, Mr. D.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Councillor Demota. Councillors, any other questions or comments? Oh, Mayor Ireland, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Just following on Councillor Demota's point, I too want to emphasize that the value of membership although it's principally the collective efforts of AMPPE. Membership at AMPPE has over the years provided us a really excellent opportunity for one-on-one discussions with Parks Canada at the CAO level. Typically, in years past, the CAO would travel from Ottawa to attend the annual fundraising gala in Banff, and we would always use that as an opportunity for one-on-one discussions with the CAO related to specific municipality of Jasper issues. So although we were there as a member for a collective approach, it provided an opportunity to have one-on-one discussions specific to our interests as a municipality. And so we were able to leverage membership in a really positive way. So I think there is more than just the collective effort, as important as that is. There is an opportunity for interface with Parks Canada at the highest level of that organization, which is valueless, really.
Mike, go ahead.
Kayla just emailed me and said the AMPPE membership for Jasper, it was $2,300.
Oh. Seems value there. The value to the community seems a no-brainer to me.
So it gave you 50% off the membership, right? Like that. It was so easy.
Just like that. Yeah, you could have had us for more. Too bad it went that way.
We don't need any. No, we really think that it's important to have the voice. Jasper's there to be part of the voice. That's the real piece that makes it valuable. That the community's behind it, and we know that we've had probably the strongest support from councillors in the past by attending and being active amongst the participants, especially at the gala, where you can really get some meat on the bones. And I think that for years, Banff was always so jealous because the CAO from Parks Canada would always go for beers with Jasper Council, and they would always wonder why they weren't invited. So we definitely got the win on that one.
Councillor Junot, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Many communities have memberships in a lot of organizations. We don't have very many. And in view of the budget restrictions that are behind us, it'll be very easy to cancel memberships. However, this is one that I believe we should not, but we should continue to support this, because what has been stated by other members, especially the mayor, but as well, I think in the future, we have issues that we're going to need a strong voice for. And anytime we can ally ourselves with somebody like AMPPE, I think that we would gain well and do well. And consequently, I support this ongoing membership. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Junot.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, I'm going to take this opportunity to just perilously dive into one issue that you raised, Mike. That was the track setting. I have to watch myself because I'm apoplectic about that service reduction in a time where people need more than ever to opportunities to get out in a socially distanced fashion outdoors. Has AMPPE been active on that front of track setting in Jasper? Has any advocacy work been done there? Is there any way potentially, if council were of similar mind, to join and work together on that particular question?
Yeah, so we found out from a chamber meeting, I want to say it was the 12th possibly, that it had been brought up to the Jasper Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce relayed that information to Tourism Jasper. Tourism Jasper, I was at a meeting with Tourism Jasper and messaged Debbie, and she arranged for a meeting with the superintendent. I believe it's December 10th. So within a span of, I would say, less than 6 hours, we were able to secure a meeting and have a conversation about where this goes and get some clarity on, are there opportunities for others to participate? Can we enhance the offer for the winter time? We were in touch with the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge relatively quickly as well, and informed them of what had happened, to which they may alter their operations in order to fill that void. Because again, it was an 11th hour decision that unfortunately was probably made last spring. So it could have been communicated in a lot more meaningful way, and we could have possibly addressed the shortcoming. But what we will determine is steps forward, and that will be something that we will then communicate to the community, and hopefully come up with some more opportunities. Because I couldn't agree with you more, Deputy Mayor Butler, that outdoor activities this year are seeing a huge uptick in terms of purchase of cross-country skis and snowshoes, outdoor activity being something that people are definitely striving for and encouraged to do. And at the same time, we take away probably one of the most accessible, safest opportunities in a hub area. And it just got removed, and it wasn't for any reason other than an operational reason from Parks Canada. So it's holding their feet to the fire on those. But yes, that's exactly what. So right away we recognized that advocacy opportunity and said we need to get to the table and find out what happened, but more importantly, what can we do to increase the offers? Because that's really what this is about. It's the opportunities for Canadians and visitors to enjoy the national parks responsibly.
Well, thanks for that. It's bad news. It's good to know more about it. I guess I'm obviously not blind to fiscal realities in terms of service provision, and we at council dealt with such questions many times, but nonetheless, that is a huge loss. I've really been aware of the increased participation, particularly from those relatively new to outdoor winter activities, and that track setting has been really valuable. So Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. And I too will personally feel the loss of that opportunity, but and without being an apologist for or a defender necessarily in this instance of Parks Canada, I do want to say that in fairness to them, my understanding is that it is not entirely an operational issue or a fiscal issue. And again, without discounting the importance of collaboration and communication, which perhaps was deficient, and that again underscores the importance of groups like AMPPE. But I understand that the driving issue, and this was presented at an economic recovery task force that I attended last week, they had at least one skier fall through the ice last year. So there is a significant liability issue, and we know those concerns having dealt with toboggan hills. So it is not simply an operational budgetary consideration. They took a decision based on a number of factors, and although I fully agree that that could have been communicated in a different way and options could have been considered prior to the announcement coming out, I think it's important to recognize that Parks 2 is subject to the same sort of pressures that we feel as a municipality, and it's just worth noting that it is not all is always exactly what it seems.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Mayor Ireland. Right, anything else from council for Mr. Day? Mr. Day, thanks very much for your report, for your presentation, and for the discussion. All the best, much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, the next presenter is for Jasper Skate Park Committee. We have Mr. Savage and I think Mr. Morgan here. You both ready? Hi, Daryl.
Hi. Is the sound okay? It's not too quiet, or?
The sound is great, thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't know how this.
Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us, and we are ready when you are.
Okay, I'm gonna try to screen share this PowerPoint presentation I made, so hopefully it works. Let's see here. Host disabled. Oh, you can't. There's no way for me to do the screen sharing on here.
Oh, yeah, just 1 second, Daryl.
Oh, thanks, Kayla. Sorry about that.
Daryl, if it doesn't work on your end, I can throw it up on my computer.
Sure, I think I can get it working here. Should be able to. Maybe try on your end there, Trevor, if you can get it going.
I'm also disabled there.
Sorry,
right.
we're just trying to get a hold of Christine. She's the host of the meeting and she just has to click off that panelists can share the screen.
Oh,
So-
okay.
Oh no, it's John. Sorry, John. You.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We're-
Yeah, I'll definitely be able to do it when it's disabled here. But, sorry, guys.
Nope,
How are
that's
you guys
fine.
doing?
I'm looking for it.
Daryl, you should be good to go now. I kicked off Mr. Greathead as a co-host. So.
There we go. Now we're good. Now we're good. Okay, we'll try this screen. Where do you go? Screen. Okay, share. And we'll go PowerPoint. This one here, and we'll go presentation. This one here. Is this it? Present. There we go. All right. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. Computer's not really the best. Yeah. Nothing's coming up yet, I guess, eh? Let's see here.
No, we can see the screen there.
We can see it. It's not in presentation mode, but we can
Yeah,
see your entire screen.
trying to get it in presentation here. Sorry about that.
Here, Daryl, do you want me to try just throw it up on my screen?
Yeah, that might be easier. Yeah, I'm having problems here. So do I have to undo it or screen share, or how do I?
No, it should be okay. I'll just
Okay.
close this thing.
There, you got it. Okay.
Perfect. You just tell me when you want to advance the slides.
There we go. That looks better.
That looks good. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, this is just a updated PowerPoint presentation I threw together last Friday. Just want to give you guys a little update and a projected direction for success. So just kind of like to break it down and make it more, easy to understand. And also I know that Mark Furcho has left us, so just to kind of bring up to speed quickly if anybody needs to know. As you can see on the left, that's our old skate park. There's what we're looking for. And actually these photos work perfect because you can see this photo here is almost the exact same vantage point as what we're looking at for our new park. So that picture is taken by Craig Gilbert from the Fitzy a while back. I guess we can just go to the next slide, sorry. Okay, so basically, with the COVID, we've had, obviously, everyone's had a effect from that, but we're still here. We've been here since 2014, and we're advocating for, obviously, a new state-of-the-art concrete skate park for Jasper. And we're, going to break down just clearly in this presentation where we've come and where we are going in order to ensure Jasper will have the best skate park, a premium skate park, as soon as possible at the least cost to our municipality. That's very key too. I guess we can go to the next one there. So here's an old picture from our first barbecue there. Over the past 6 years, we've come a long way. We've done countless fundraisers, town hall meetings, council meetings, grant applications. We've raised over $106,000. We've dispersed $56,000 for our detailed design that we own with New Line Skate Parks. So we have this design for that current area of the skate park. And so we currently have approximately 50,000, probably a little more than that, but that's what we have for income at this point. So we can go to the next slide there. And so we've just, it's just a quick breakdown of kind of the attainments. So our first meeting was with local teams, and we created a Facebook page in 2014, 2015. We got a $1,000 check from the RCMP when we did that barbecue. 2016, we incorporated as a not-for-profit society under the Alberta Societies Act. And 2017, we were assigned a permanent location at the current site. And then, so that was a huge milestone for us there, and we really appreciate that. Our concept design was completed after 2 town hall meetings with New Line in fall of 2017. And then 2018, we actually won the CFEP Small Stream Grant for $21,250 from the Alberta government. And yeah, so that was a huge motivation for us there. So we're good for the next slide there. And then, so this is just some fundraisers we've done over the years. Lots of things. You know, we did the municipal Christmas party coat check. That was really fun. Did a couple, like quite a few silent auctions. What I want to bring your attention to actually currently is we have November 2020, we just started a JSC GoFundMe campaign. It's actually under, if you look up under GoFundMe, look up the Jasper Skate Park Improvement Initiative. And that's the brand new campaign. I think we're at $670 right now. So just starting off slow, but hopefully we'll get that in the newspaper and some advertisement for that. And hopefully that'll build up, because we're really hoping that that one is going to take off here and you know, get some local support. It's all up to, you know, obviously you know, more the bigger you know, corporations and stuff, I think is what we're really going to need. But it's just fun to have the community involved too, and it actually does help and it gets people involved, so that's a good one. So here we are. This is just some grants that we've applied for. We've done countless entries for grants. Like I said, we won the 2017 CFEP Small Stream Grant there. We've done, you know, a couple years, 3 years of the Alberta Blue Cross there. Unfortunately, they don't do that one anymore. Grants are getting a little bit tricky at this point just because of COVID, and a lot of the grants that were previously available are not available. But luckily, we still have the big CFEP grant from Alberta, which is the one that really is going to get us to where we want to go, which we'll get to the next slide here. I guess we're good here for that one. So yeah, this is just a thank you to our community support. For anyone that's new here, we've had so much support from this community. Just all sorts of locals. We had locals last year, they painted decks, and we did a silent auction with decks, you know, skateboards that people have on their walls. We have one on our wall here. And, you know, we did, you know, just recently we did also a silent auction just from local businesses that were kind enough to give, you know, some items. And then we've had the Jasper Rotary Club, Jasper, with a couple of huge donations, the poker run from the motorcycle tours. So lots of support through the town. The town has been amazing. December project from 2017. Okay, I think that's probably good there. And then here, so this is just what we're looking at here. This is the projected direction for success. So 2020 and beyond. So as mentioned last year in our council presentation, the key element in making this project happen logically is it's going to be applying for and securing the Alberta CFEP large stream grant, which could pay for half of the total project cost. The only stipulation is we need to come up with half the project cost. And I think everybody is on board and understands this. I just want to make sure, and I'm highlighted in bold here, the deadline for the grant is June 15th, 2021, just so we can remember that. And also, obviously, recently, St. Paul, Alberta was successful with CFEP large stream, winning $361,000, paying for half of their skate park. So that was a big one for them. And it just really, the reason why I highlight that is just to show how, you know, it's very possible that we could have, you know, this funding from this grant. So I think that's probably good for that screen there. And so this is just some numbers. So with the estimated park cost, we had a letter from New Line from Trevor actually, and they went over kind of costs would be for 2021 would cost $875 for the physical skate park. We've already paid for the design, but this is on top of that. This is the actual materials. As you know, everything has gone up with COVID, with construction and everything's gone up. So unfortunately it's at $875 right now. So it was a little bit lower before, but so it's going up 3% to 6% per year. And we can estimate with the construction cost of $927,000 plus GST for a 2020 build, because if we get that CFEP grant from June 15th, that's the deadline, then that will be win it, if we win it, we'll know by December 2021. So it would be a 2022 bill, this essentially. So based upon that number of 927,000, we need about 464,000 for half of the total project cost. And we can cut off $50,000 because that's the amount that we currently have. So this means we need about 414,000 to cover the shortfall at this moment. This is just some numbers for you guys. Next page there, I guess. And so this is just planning ahead. So we're just kind of giving a heads up. I know it's budget season and we got lots of things going on. So just wanted to give a good heads up of where we're at, just to so everybody knows. So Jasper Municipality plans ahead for the future, considers future budgeting. We are hoping they might be able to consider us for 2022 budget, as that would be when we would be requiring capital for the completion of this project if we win the 2021 CFEP Larging Grant. As it stands at this time, we need $414,000 to cover the shortfall, but by the time June 15th rolls around, this number could be significantly reduced by our current endeavors. And we'll go to the next page there. And so this is the good news. So there is, however, a lot of good news to report as our project is gaining traction. We're also gaining recognition. Recently, 2 local foundations are considering a donation of $200,000. The only catch is that we need to try to match this amount as a committee in order to garner the support. It does seem daunting, but we're remaining positive and have a lot of support on our side, including the local service groups and businesses who are looking to donate as well. On a smaller scale, even interested locals can get involved and help us out, as we have recently started what I was talking about earlier, the GoFundMe campaign, which is climbing steadily. So that GoFundMe campaign is anyone can get involved with that. And I guess that's probably good for that one. So yeah, this is just what's at stake. So just kind of obvious stuff here. With COVID, many public facilities are either closed or restricted access, while skate parks are typically still open and remain a valuable asset for physical and mental wellness. As we see a rising need for affordable, accessible activities, skate parks becoming more and more essential for healthy, thriving communities. With the June 15th deadline quickly approaching for the CFEP Larging Grant, the time is now to ensure that we not miss the opportunity to secure a substantial amount of funding from the Alberta government earmarked specifically for projects of this kind. If we don't apply, we cannot win, and the building costs continually rising 3 to 6% a year. Sooner is definitely better than later. I'm sure everybody understands that. That's not really that. It's just a matter of obviously whatever is feasible, I guess, at the time. So yeah, basically just a quick breakdown of the brass tacks here. So you got current funds are $50,000. That's what we hold in our bank account. The amount we need at this time to qualify is $414,000. The deadline for the 2021 CFEP grant is June 15th, 2021. And the announcement of the 2021 CFEP recipients would be December 2021. And the projected groundbreaking for our new skate park, pending CFEP awarding, would be spring 2022. And, best case scenario, late summer 2022, we could be seeing kids running around in a new skate park. So hopefully, and okay, so that's good for that one there. And so yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys because you guys always let us come and present. We really appreciate giving us this platform here, and we hope all the information that you provide gives a good understanding of what we are facing in the upcoming year. We greatly appreciate you guys, Municipality of Jasper, and your commitment to our project over the years. We hope that we can overcome the final hurdle next year and create the skate park that Jasper deserves and needs for the future. We'll be moving forward relentlessly to see this come into fruition as best we can, and we'll immediately update you guys when progress is attained. If anyone has any questions or concerns moving forward, please just feel free to contact our committee at jasperskateparkcommittee@outlook.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the presentation. Maybe Trevor has some stuff that he can add there on his end from statistics from other communities, or you have to turn mine off, or?
No, that's good, Daryl. No, I think the only thing I might add, and good morning, Mayor and Council, is that the model that you're seeing Daryl pursue, which is looking at some good grassroots community fundraising and approaching some local businesses and then really tackling some of these reliable grants for these facilities in conjunction with partnering with the municipality for some seed money is what we're seeing as the most successful program moving forward. And probably the best example recently is the St. Paul skate park that Daryl had mentioned there, where they had a Blue Cross grant. They had some money from the county, the municipality, local fundraising, and then they're able to leverage that. Over 350,000 of that for matching funds. With respect to the cost of the park and where we're at in terms of design and flexibility with that, we've completed the facility concept design, which there were some images of at the beginning of the presentation. And we've completed technical drawings to about 30 to 50%, so that we can get accurate quantity takeoffs and just understand where we'd be at for a safe budget level. So the figures that are being provided are conservative and probably being a little bit safe. Ultimately, just an upset budget figure needs to be established, and then once that's there, the design can be fully finalized to that limit so that it's not to exceed, and then all the final elements are balanced out through a design build approach there. So that's the only other thing I might add at this point.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. If that is concludes your formal presentation, if you could unshare your screen. Very well presented, much appreciated, and nice work to see you progressing with community fundraising. And I was just looking up the GoFundMe page here and see that donations are coming in. That's a great way to show community engagement towards your project. So congratulations on that. Councillors, I imagine there may be some comments or questions for Mr. Savage or Mr. Morgan. Going once, Councillor Demota.
Thank you, gentlemen, for presenting today. They seem to get better every time, so thank you for that. It's well articulated, and it's exciting news for the community. And you've stated that, well, and then I know that we've had a couple of foundations step forward in the tune of $200,000. I don't know if that has been completely certified yet, but I understand that they were working on some promissory notes to make sure that that funding is backed. The question that I have, I think, is where are we at for 2021 in the municipal ask? Because we're working on our budgets right now, and I understand that the build isn't till 2022, but you need to have funding confirmation for June of 2021. So are you asking council to back whatever fundraising gap that you might face going forward?
Yeah, that's what we're doing at this point. We're just seeing if council would be okay to back it, just so that we have the opportunity to write the grant and really go all in with this grant. If we get the opportunity to apply for it, then it would, if we don't apply, obviously we don't win. So we just want to make sure we take every opportunity to try to win that grant and to get half of the skate park paid for. Obviously we know there's obviously budgets involved and stuff, but yeah, that's essentially, just to be clear, that's what we're looking for, is 414 at this moment. And obviously keep you updated as things come down the pipe here with any more donations we get or grants that we receive as we continue fundraising and applying for other things. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're asking for there at this moment.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question, if I may continue, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Please do.
Through you to Ms. Malinchuk, if council was to go down this route to support within the 2021 budget, we wouldn't be looking at a tax requisition amount, but would we have money in reserves to support, let's say, half of the 400,000? So if they already have 200,000 and we have a 200,000 gap, let's just say, I'm hoping that that the skate park committee will be able to get at least half of the half. So if there's $100,000 gap, let's say, instead of going to a tax requisition, would we have money in reserves to support that gap and ask for 2021?
Was that a question for Mrs. Malinchuk?
Yes.
All right.
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Demoda. I believe that in 2021, what the skateboard park would need is a letter confirming the amount that would be available to the society needing going forward. I could be incorrect, but that's what I understood to date. Can Mr. Savage clarify that possibly?
Yeah, so I have talked to CFEP many times about this, and that is correct. So they don't need to have like a physical like bank account. They just need a promissory note. It's just gonna ensure that, you know, the municipality is backing it. That's all they need at that moment in June 15th. So the actual capital would only be required once the actual physical project was begun, their groundbreaking or whatever, whenever it was actually required. But yeah, up until then, that's correct.
Well,
Mayor, if I may.
Mrs. Malinchuk, please go ahead.
That being said, I have placed it as part and parcel of the 2022 capital budget. It was in the 2021, but when things changed with the CFEP application process, I bumped it to the 2022 capital. So it is in the documents provided online. Now, what's stated online and in the documents is more associated with the full cost, being that with CFEP, it would have to be a donation to the municipality to contribute towards the capital project itself. So it is in the works. Now, when it comes down to reserves, it's not necessarily in the reserves at this moment because we've been placing a lot of reserves into the capital projects going on within the rec center. And there are some that have to be committed to the ICIP and MSIC program going forward. However, it is part of the plan and it has been scheduled in, and we can talk more about that during the budget process. But at the moment, it has been scheduled as part and parcel of debentures going forward.
Councillor Demoda.
Okay, just to add a little bit more to the confusion, I guess. The only place that I kind of am a little perplexed is in the sense of promising something for 2022 when there will be a new council. We can say with this council that we'd be in full support of backing, you know, the gap in fundraising, but that will, for the 2022 budget, that will be entirely up to the next council, which we have no control over. So I think that's where the waters get a little difficult that way.
Thank you. Ms. Malinchuk, did you have anything further on that?
Understood, and potentially administration could bring the conversation back to the table during the budget discussions to ensure that we're going about this in the way that council wishes to proceed, so that this council might be able to support the project going forward as much as possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Janot, I think I saw your hand.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have a very soft spot for this organization or this project. This town spends a lot of money on recreation, and for the most part, it's for team sports. The kids that are on the skate park, for the most part, are the ones that are kind of left out on team sports. This is a great outdoor activity. It keeps them active. They can go at their own time. Nothing is scheduled. And that's what that group of individuals like to have. especially under COVID, this is very, very safe. So this is very appropriate. I'm not afraid of I'm pleased that Mrs. Melanchuk has included that in the 2021 budget, and I'm not afraid to pass that on to the next council, because I think this is a very good project. Like I say, we spend a lot of money in recreation, and these children are left out. So I think it's time we include them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Janot. Though I think for clarity, I believe what Mrs. Melanchuk said is that she has included in the 2022 budget, but obviously this council can determine if it would be included in the 2021 budget. Mayor Ireland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Firstly, Daryl and Trevor, I compliment you both on that presentation. That's excellent work as always. And Daryl in particular, I compliment you on your tenacity. This has been a really challenging project for you, spread over a number of years, which you hadn't necessarily anticipated, but you've really stuck with it, and I compliment you for that. Given the presentation and my anticipation that at some point council may be required to write a letter of support, I wonder whether I could ask you to share that presentation with Ms. Byrne, who can then distribute it to council. There's lots of really useful information in that was on the screen that could be employed in the future when we have to write to ministers or others for support. So I would just ask that if you can share that so it can come to all of council. And then one really minor matter, but I would really like to be clear on the recipient of either the CFEP grant funds or support from council. And so you appear on our agenda as the Jasper Skate Park Committee, but I heard reference also today to the society. So can you just clarify for me who is the recipient of funds?
Yeah, for sure. So we are officially known as the Jasper Skate Park Committee. We're just incorporated under the Alberta Societies Act. So we are a society, I guess that's what we're classified as in the Alberta government size, but we are known as the Jasper Skate Park Committee. So that would be the official name that would be under there.
And so it will be the Jasper Skate Park Committee that applies for CFEP funding.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the great thing about having the committee, as you guys all know, if you have a nonprofit, then you're allowed to apply for the CFEP, because if you, like a municipality or whatever, can't do it, but these nonprofit societies can. So it works out well for everyone.
Yes, thank you. Understood. I just wanted to have absolute clarity on who that entity, the legal entity is. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Councillor Demota, I see your hand, but I will just quickly run the table and see if any other councillors wish to speak up, to speak again before I go back to you again. Councillor Wilson? Councillor Wilson, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. I'll just chime in a little bit. I don't see any difference in years past with this application. I think we've been supporting it for the last 3 years. It wouldn't hold me back, being it that it's our last year. They're applying for the grant in 2021. I think we have to support it in 2021. And really it is just a promissory note. We've done it, I'm pretty positive, the last 3 years, and I don't see any difference in our last year on term. So I fully support it. The money may, I'm sure we can figure out where the money comes from after the fact, but I think we've just got to put our support behind it at this point, and hope that it's successful in this year, as we have in the last 3 years. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keller MP. I'll come back to you for just a moment, but I don't think we have supported it other than verbally. And I think that's where the rubber needs to hit the road, unless I'm mistaken, and anyone could correct me, but I don't think we have provided any specific commitment for any specific amount of money in the past. We have spoken in support, but I don't think we have acted. Could Mrs. Malinchuk or anyone else clarify that for me? Mr. Savage, go ahead.
Yeah, so the way I understand it, so I think you guys have always supported it, like you said, verbally. I think when you guys did do the promissory was with the CFAP small stream, and I think that was the only time that we did the promissory thing, but it really exemplified how well that system works, you know, the promissory note. And because, you know, and when I was working with CFAP at that time, they were very helpful, and I really got the idea that they really support these skate park projects at this time. And yeah, they really they want to see these projects come into fruition. So but yeah, I don't think we really had the opportunity the other years, and we were going to do it last year, but like I said, I missed the deadline. The deadline got changed in the spring when COVID was happening. It got changed to June 15th. So we got kind of caught off guard. But yeah, to answer that question, I think it was that 1 year that you guys did do it, and then that was the only time so far.
Okay, so thanks for the clarification, Councillor Butler.
Sure.
May I? Yeah, so to be clear, have you applied for the large stream CFAP grant at all in the last 3 years?
No, we haven't applied for it the last 3 years because we couldn't qualify. Basically, you need that half of the project cost to qualify, and that's their main stipulation. So yeah, we didn't.
So you had come to us at some point, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, yet we didn't support the large stream. In the next year, we supported this small stream, and then last year didn't support anything. So, okay. Thank you.
I think that's clear. Good. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Keller, MP.
Thanks, Darrell and Trevor. That was a great presentation. I too support you guys, and I'm hoping that in our term that we can set you guys up for success going forward. I think that's very important to the kids. As Councillor Janot said, there's a lot of kids that don't do group sports. And I think the skate park is a great addition to our assets in Jasper. And I wish you the best. And I hope this council will be able to stand behind you and we can have something in place going forward before our term is done.
Thanks, Councillor Kelleher, MP. I guess for my part, I'll just add in that I also am very supportive of this initiative. I would like to see us do something within this term. And I have in mind that it could be a workable idea to determine some maximum amount and make a commitment to match funding from the community. I think that could be a way that we could contribute while at the same time encouraging additional contributions from the committee and from the community, and help this committee get over the hurdle that they need to qualify for that CFAP grant. It would be a big win for the community. Anything further? Councillor Demota.
Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor Butler. Yeah, I appreciate that concept, that approach, because I had a fear that if with council support that there might be a false sense of security. And from having some discussions with the foundations that have come forward, there is a bit of a catch to their support, and they want the community and other agencies and organizations within the community to match what they're putting in, so that we can meet that shortfall for the CFAP grant. And if we don't achieve that, there is the possibility that they'll pull out their funding. So I don't want people in the community to have a false sense of security and thinking that, you know, this is a done deal, because we've got a lot of work to do still, and $200,000 within the next 6 months or so is going to be quite a difficult task. So I think the approach of matching whatever we can raise in the community would be a good approach. So that would entice people to get out and get moving on this, rubber hitting the road. so to speak. So thank you for that. And good luck to you, Mr. Savage, and the skate park committee. And thanks, Trevor, for coming to support that today. It's nice to hear from you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks for all your support over the years. Once again, everybody, this council has been amazing, and the mayor and everybody. And I really appreciate all your support. And, you know, this is a passion for, you know, the Jasper Skate Park Committee. We want to see a place where people can go and, like what Bert was saying, you know, able to go and do a sport and become skilled at an art form, you know, at any time of the day or when they want to go, you know. With the COVID and everything, like it's really, I think it's really important. So I'm glad that you guys see the merit and the value in this project, and we're gonna keep pushing hard, and we're gonna try to match that 200,000. And I've been, I wrote to ATCO Electric again, and you know, because they did part of that 50,000 is 5,000 that they were gonna put forward, and I mentioned to them where we're at and with the foundation. So we'll see where that goes too. So yeah, we're trying to work many angles here. So yeah, we'll keep you updated. And once again, thanks you so much for all the support, and thanks for setting us up too for the next council, because that's something that, you know, I wouldn't have taken into consideration, but you guys are very much looking out for the committee. So and the skate park for the community. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Savage and Mr. Morgan. Excellent presentation and good information, good discussion. Much appreciated. All the best.
Thank you guys. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Before we move to agenda item number 6, business arising, I just want to briefly go back to item 5.1, and I want to acknowledge and thank Mayor Ireland for talking me off the ledge a little there. I am frequently enough frustrated by criticism that is not necessarily founded in fact, and I think I stepped in it there a little. That's not helpful publicly to throw around words like apoplectic, even though I love saying it. There's lots of moving parts and decisions around service provision, and I implied, I think, perhaps unduly criticism of Parks Canada without understanding the reasons behind the decisions we made. It remains true that we need to work together to do all we can to provide outdoor recreation opportunities, particularly for those, you know, newer to sports and with less skills. And I have a soft place in my heart for flat and easy track setting, because I love to see new folks on rented equipment out there, but I needn't quite have spoken as in the way I did. So thanks, Mayor Ireland, for clarifying some of the reason behind the decision. These are ledgy times, so I apologize for some of the words I used there. Councillor Demota. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to note that I did put apoplectic in the Paul Butler word usage bank so that I may use it at a later date. I like the word, but you know, I understand where you're coming from. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks very much. I try to give you a word every meeting, so there you go. Mayor Ireland, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate your additional comments, Councillor Butler. But I will say that I recognize that in these stressful times enhanced by COVID, just about everybody needs to be talked off a ledge from time to time. And it's just the nature of things. So just trying to accentuate the element of kindness that has always been our messaging as one of the ways to deal with COVID is important. And everybody is under a certain amount of stress, and we need to support each other. So happy to bring that up, and very, very happy that you're so receptive to it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And you're exactly right. And that's why I wanted to just walk back. Sometimes words are unnecessarily harsh, and these are difficult times. And in the end, everyone is just trying. So thanks for that. And thanks, Council, for permitting me to just step back to the previous item. If there's nothing more under agenda item 5, I'd like to move on to agenda item number 6, business arising from minutes. Councillors, is there any business arising? Councillor Journeau, are you raising your hand? No. Anything on business arising, councillors? I have one item there to raise, and that is, I'm sorry, I just need a moment to find it again. Thank you. It is in our minutes from our last committee of the whole that we raised a question. I believe it was raised by myself and by Councillor McGrath around flexibility within the ICIP grant program. And I'm raising this because it's fresh in my mind relative to the skate park. We had asked if we could look into how rigid or flexible the ICIP grant is as to what specific aspects of recreation facility upgrades was possible. And I'm just wondering, Mr. Greathead or Ms. Malinchuk, whether there is any further update today on that question.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, if I can respond to that, we have been researching and seeing the application through and how we were approved for the application. So as you know, it started in 2017 when we were acknowledged for that grant. But the qualifications that we needed to meet for the approval of that grant had to address certain aspects. And obviously inclusivity and mobility or access to all municipal buildings is one of those driving factors. We've been in touch with the grant providers. I believe Ms. Malinchuk can speak better to that, but we would not have been successful in the grant application had we not included items such as the elevator is what we're being informed. So that was one of those long developed grant applications. There was a lot of back and forth to get to that point. And my understanding is that we would not have been successful without those items being listed and consideration towards the overall project. So I don't know if Ms. Malinchuk is there and has anything further to add.
Thank you, Mr. Greathead, through to Deputy Mayor. Yes, so I have had the chance to speak to the grant advisor, and that was Mr. Greathead was informed about what the conversation surrounded, and that was exactly what came down. I was waiting on more information to provide more of a formal update, but that is what has been communicated, and I am waiting for more documentation to put it together for an information item. But a lot of grants, when you're applying for them, will be either accessibility oriented or inclusion oriented or green energy focus or whatnot. So that was one of the ones that was definitely geared towards accessibility.
All right, thank you very much. I'm satisfied myself to leave it at that for now. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, further to that, I thought that this was a new grant. I did not know that this was applications started in 2017, and it might have just been my ignorance. But so this has been ongoing. This is not something that has just come about. This is, 3 years in the making.
I believe it was 2018, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any further new business or business arising? All right, seeing none, I'd like to move on to agenda item 8, brief updates. I will plan for those who may be wondering, a comfort break at around 11. We will have been sitting. Oh, well, no, actually we've 9:30. Oh yeah, we will have been sitting for an hour and a half at that time. It seems like a good time to take a break. So we now will move forward to item 8.1, 2021 utility fees. And Mr. Greathead, will this be yours to lead discussion?
Deputy Mayor, as we discussed last week and the weeks previous, breaking out different scenarios and different rate structures that could be considered by council, we were tasked to focus on a few and narrow down our scope. So Ms. Malachuk, if you're available to speak to those, she has worked out the potential impacts and the different models and costings that would affect people. So if she's available.
Yes, Mr. Greathead, through to council. So this is a request for direction, and the dates that we've put onto the direction now, we've indicated that ideally we'd be looking at December 1st for direction to receive final direction required to support the bylaw preparation. Decision wise, we would have to bring back the bylaw on December 15th, first and second reading, to ensure that it be back for third reading on January 5th, so that it can have a sufficient notice and advertising within the paperwork that goes out to each client. So in the discussions, we've been talking about which type of consumption model for water and sewer, and whether or not flat rates or the tiered consumption rate should be applied. Some things to keep in mind throughout the conversations to be had over the next couple meetings is that the additional revenue per annum is based on the figure would be going towards not only reserves, but also requests from the utilities departments on staffing requirements and such. So that being said, if councils should want a certain amount going towards reserves, then that might be something that's important to discuss as well. So that is why in the third bullet, in the second bullet of the third bullet, that a 1.1 would effectively increase transfers to the reserves by 500, but also contribute to the other requests. Now, those requests are still on the table for discussion within the budget meetings, and whether or not council would want to pursue a direction in one way or another. So that's still to be had, and that will be discussed tomorrow evening at the public meeting and at other meetings as well, if so desired. And yeah, so that's basically the timeline that we're looking at, so that we can have a smooth transition into applying the bylaw so that it can be applicable for the 2021 year. And as indicated by council last week, our last discussion, all the weeks are melding together, that we bring back just 3 options to discuss further, being option 1A and 1B, and that is, and option 2A. They're all based off of a rate by meter size. So every 2-month billing cycle, there would be a meter size base rate. And then there's also either by flat rate consumption, which is option 1A, or B, being that we had 2 amounts put into there, one being in option 1A, the rates that are applicable currently as it stands in 2020 at $1.41 per cubic meter of water and $2.32 per cubic meter of sewer. Or the other alternative was just additionally 30 cents on top of the cubic meter by water and sewer. And then also option 2A was the tiered recommendation, going from $1.41 to $2.05 for water, and for sewer going from $2.32 to $2.95. So again, that would be starting at the rates that are applicable in 2020, and then tiering up to instill some conservation in water usage going forward. These models would also allow some reliability coming in on the flat rate that would be assumed each 2 months or annually. So those are the ones that we brought back and removed the others. Now, being said that those numbers and options are on the table or on the document for discussion, any of those numbers can ultimately be changed or played with to see what other figures come about using different figures. So in a nutshell, that is what the report is, to instill more discussion going forward on the utilities. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mrs. Melanchuk. The reality is that we have a very tight time frame for this discussion. As Ms. Melanchuk pointed out, we really do need a decision by December 15th. While it's possible to leave some budgetary decisions a little later, this is not one of them, because the first round of utility billing starts in January. So we are on a very tight timeline, Council, and I think it's important that we use today to prepare ourselves in any way possible through questions and committee level discussion for the decision that we have to make essentially at the next, almost at the next meeting, but certainly no later than the meeting following. So I open floor for conversation and discussions around this item. Councillor Keller-Ampe.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. My question is for Mr. Greathead or Mrs. Melanchuk. How are these rates related to outside accommodations and to the campgrounds? Like, so come next spring, we'll have 780 sites reopened at Whistler campgrounds. How does these rates relate to those properties?
Deputy Mayor, to respond to Councillor Keller-Ampe's question. This year we installed a meter onto the seasonal line that feeds through 93A and goes out that way. And that covers that. This year we just did it to figure out actually what the usage is on that, and looking at what it should be charged out as well as we have the idea that we should be putting on a meter on the sewage line coming back in from Whistler's Camp, from the RV dump through that system, and also be charging for the food usage of our utilities. A lot of it historically has gone unmetered, and therefore it's revenue that's been lost. And this year we've been gearing up towards getting a better understanding of that. So I really can't ballpark it. I don't know what our water usage is. I haven't compared it to when Whistler's Campground was open or be able to project in that manner. But I intend that we meter and bill for all of the services we provide. Right now, Whistler and the campground like that, it's charged at a rate based on the number of campers, and then it's an estimated usage on number of sites booked at a time, and that's kind of a hard one to figure out. So that's why we need to go to a metering system. So we'd need to invest a little bit of cost going forward to get like a clamp on mag meters and stuff for our sewage flows, and then meter at the water where we're providing the water, metering the pipes going out on the end of the distribution system, that's specifically towards parts.
So, Mr. Greathead, the figures that are provided here are not including Whistler campgrounds or the outside areas, or the estimates are in there?
Some of the utilities like the resorts on 93A, they're individually metered. And that's subtracted from what we charge parks. Excuse me.
Maybe, Mr. Greathead, are you all right?
Had a bad time for a tickle in the throat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Greathead.
So I'm not sure, Mr. Greathead, if you had finished answering the question. I lost track of where we were. Councillor Keller, MP, I think we were at you.
Yeah, I was just asking if the rates that are proposed here include the outside line areas and the campgrounds.
They would be going at the rate once we have the metering installed.
So I'd just like to pick up on that. Forgive me for jumping in, but to clarify, do I understand that up until now that we have been supplying water to Whistler Campground and accepting the sewage for the wastewater treatment plant, but we have not been billing for it? Is that what I understand? And that your intent is to begin metering and billing, but heretofore we have not been? Is that correct?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I can't say absolutely that we haven't been charging. I know that there's various streams that we're looking at and trying to zero in on. For example, the temporary line on going down 93A, my understanding it's a 3-inch galvanized steel line, prone to a lot of leaks, prone to a lot of breakages, and it still feeds that. So there's a lot of wastage in there, and we're only recovering a certain amount based on what's actually used at the lodges, like the resorts that are on 93A. It hasn't been a consistent approach to metering or billing on a lot of these. A lot of these are just in agreements, mathematical formulas based on campers and stuff like that. So we're still working to build out, the definite and absolute costs on our utilities. There's a lot of work still to be done. Last year was the first time we ever metered what was going out on that seasonal line on 93A.
All right, thanks for that. Questions from council? Mayor Ireland, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Mr. Greathead. I suppose I was encouraged. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I believe that Mrs. Melanchuk indicated that there's no real magic in the numbers. They can all be adjusted. And I am personally interested in a base rate plus a tiered rate, perhaps as shown in option 2A, but not necessarily those figures. And so I wonder, Mr. Greathead, whether you can let me know if, firstly, there is the basis for the ratio between the water rate and the sewer rate. So currently the water rate is 1.41 and the sewer rate is 2.32. So the factor of multiplication from water to sewer is about 1.64. In the projections for that 2A, the next ratio between water and sewer drops to 1 to 1.54, and then 1 to 1.148, and then 1 to 1.43. So it's a diminishing ratio. And I wonder whether there's a reason for that, or if there's a rationale behind that, if there is a need to maintain some sort of ratio. Or, and this becomes a bit of a long question, I guess, but I might as well keep at it now that I've started. Would it be possible to reconfigure the graph in 2A to say that water starts at 1.41, which is today's rate, and sewer at 2.32, which is today's rate, and then just increase to 1.5 and 2.4 and 1.6 and 2.5 and 1.7. So just bring them all down, because my interest here is moving to a model without necessarily burdening the user with too much of an increase in fees, but establish a model that we could then adjust over time. What I need to understand is whether there is a rationale behind the ratio that's established now.
When these rate models were proposed, this was more theoretical. This is a projection on what the tiering should be, and we just had an increasing scale, so we were looking roughly to increase, and just that was at this point it was still a very arbitrary number. That's just something that we were working off of. We could model it that way, where we have a consistent differential between water and sewer. Our source water is very, very economical to produce. The water is, I believe it's the second best source water in the world. It's beautiful, it's clean. It takes very little treatment. All we do is really disinfect it. Even when we had the divers down this year, there was very little settlement into the reservoir. We're just lucky that our water is that easily affordable. That covers that the cost for our water treatment and distribution. That goes towards our staff cost, our management costs, any of our training that goes into it, plus the cost of water that we use for flushing hydrants, doing our routine maintenance and cleaning activities within the distribution system. Our wastewater treatment is vastly different. It is a very complicated process where, say, a typical municipality this size could actually continue to use sewage lagoons and maybe a small activated wetland before discharge into the river, and taking years to go through the treatment system. Our class 4 plant actually is a 15-hour process to replicate 2 years of nature's work. So the staffing component, the training component, the complexity of the facility, and again, it's in sewage. So our probes have a much shortened lifespan. Just the nature of the material that's being put through. It's a harder system to maintain. It's very labor intensive. So maybe to get back to the differential between water and sewer. Water is a lot cheaper for us to produce and make safe and treat it. The wastewater is significantly more costly, and we do have some runs too that we're still looking into. Our vac truck system is very hard on the operation, so we're going to be continually looking at and assessing the operations within the wastewater treatment plant. There's as it's been mentioned to council many times, there's significant increase or improvements that need to happen. We need to upsize the centrifuge, some major capital projects that need to get done. So, again, we can adjust the conservation model to be more linear and easily understood. But at this point, those numbers were just in there to get the discussion started and showing the potentials and options for council.
Thanks, Mr. Greathead. Mayor Ireland, anything further?
If I may, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just to be really clear, I do understand the rationale for the differential. That is, it costs more to treat the wastewater than to supply the potable water. So fair enough. But what I'm curious about is there a scientific reason for the current differential, which is 1 to 1.64. And if there is there a scientific reason or an operational reason for that differing or decreasing differential with the tiers? Or is it entirely just arbitrary and we can set what we want and get started? From an operational perspective, I just don't know how that differential was established in the first place. And if it's just a guess, that's fair enough.
Mayor
Yes,
Ireland, I'm going to, oh, sorry, I guess that was a question for Mr. Greathead. Did you want to address that?
Yes, sir. That was just an arbitrary number for us to start the conversation. So those tier breaks, and we just increased it by roughly the same amount across. We went, 20 cents per tier, and that was just arbitrarily, just for the discussion, just so we can begin working on the numbers.
Right, thank you. And I was going to chime in and say that I had noticed exactly that in fact, you simply applied additional dollar amounts at each step rather than a proportional or percentage increase. So it changed the ratio as the number climbed. All right, I think that at this point, because I promised one, I will call a short break, but we will be coming back to this issue. I think we owe it to ourselves and the community to fully flesh out this conversation before we leave it, because we will need to move forward and make a decision. So I'll call a 10-minute break if that is amenable to all of council, and ask us to reconvene at 11:15. Thank you. All right, I see that we're all back, and I will call the meeting back to order. Thank you very much. So we are on agenda item 8.1, 2021 utility fees. I'm open to questions or comments from council, but maybe as I don't see anyone weighing at me, I will take this opportunity to mention a couple of things that are on my mind with respect to our utilities budget now and going into the future. And I have sort of 4 areas of concern. I'm going to take a moment with your indulgence. The first is timing on this. I am very happy to see this in front of us. I think that since I began on council, that we have had a number of conversations around the need to address this question from a couple of standpoints, one being equity within the system, and the second being the pressing need to raise, frankly, quite a lot more money to direct toward our underground infrastructure and wastewater treatment plant. And that's more clear now than forever. So I'm really happy to see it come before us, but my difficulty with the timing is that now it is finally coming to us. It is both late in the year, in our budget year, to be making what I think are some potentially fairly momentous decisions. And then, of course, we just can't help the fact that here we are dealing with the potential of really substantial increases under COVID, and that makes it really difficult. And from that standpoint, I'm going to say that I'm going to find it hard to consider options that take more than maybe $500,000 additional from the community and into the utilities budget for this year. I'm certainly willing to look at models that would take us much further than that down the road, but I'm struggling with ideas that would impose additional burden on the community of $1 million or more in 2021. I also want to make a comment on, some of the language in the request for decision and the language we've been using around some of the modeling, and that is reference to some of this modeling as a conservation system. I appreciate that we all want to conserve, and therefore that frankly is compelling and it sounds good, but I don't see how a tiered consumption model is a conservation system at all. What it does is it might incentivize the very largest users to conserve, but it exempts all the smaller users from that imperative because of the way the tiering is applied. So I'm in favor of a conservation system if it applies to all users and encourages all users to conserve. So if we could look at a system that tiers water rates relative to usage and applies to the small users as well as the large users, then I think we would be getting somewhere. But we have many, many more small users than we have large users. And it's, you know, it's notionally compelling to place more of the burden onto the large users, and it's notionally compelling to see that as a way to raise more for the system. But you know, we all know that those large users are largely commercial users, and those large users are already paying very heavily through our taxation system. So I'm really struggling to see how any kind of a tiered system is equitable. I think it's important to remember that simply using a consumption-based system and flat fees does mean that the larger users pay already much more relative to the small users. And so that brings me to the question of equity. I'm on the same basis, I really struggle with, I guess I'm starting to really question one of the fundamental assumptions that we are making here, which is that we should have a, in essence, self-funded utility system where the entirety of our utility system is funded on a consumption model. Notionally, again, at face value, that looks to me to be, and I've always thought that that was a fairly fair system. I'm always in favor of user fees as a way of funding infrastructure. But the fact is, I'm not, there's a point at which that just doesn't become fair to me. Consider in the town, the kilometers and kilometers of underground water and sewer pipes that we have, and consider where the benefit lies for those kilometers and kilometers of underground systems and underground valves. Well, by far the greatest amount of infrastructure is servicing the residential areas of town. So I'm not sure that at one point it's fair any longer to place, you know, a really greater burden for funding our underground infrastructure and our systems on the very large users. Even the very large users at one point won't be able to afford it anymore. So since the last time we talked, I've had about this here in council, I've had a number of conversations with some of those larger users, and they've pointed out that we all need water. We all need access to the system. We all need access to the sewage system. A apartment building needs it just as much as an individual resident, and needs it just as much as a hotel. And so I'm really struggling with what I see as being any kind of a commitment going on into the future of moving toward a tiered system that could really at one point become untenable. You just can only squeeze so much money from any one user. And I'm losing faith in the idea of a entirely consumption-based funding system for our utilities, because at one point it is fair, or maybe fairer, to place a lot of the burden for the basic infrastructure of the system within the tax base and not necessarily basing it on consumption. So all that being said, I'm going to struggle to get my head around additional revenue for this first coming year of more than option 1A. And I definitely am a long way from getting behind a tiered consumption system like 2A. I would need to see a considerably altered tiering model that applies a tiering model to every user, not only to the large users. So I'll throw those comments out there at this juncture. And of course, looking forward to any other input from council or on this from administration. It's deafening silence out there. Are we done with this agenda item? Councillor Demota?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't think there's anything left to say. I think I'm in the same kind of contemplation as you are in the same place, and it's complex, and yeah, it's going to be difficult. So thank you for sharing that insight with us, and I think you pretty much covered everything. Period. I'm only kidding, but
Well,
you know, and I do appreciate your concern and the level of thought that you put behind that, and I'm in a very similar place. Thank you.
Well, I highly doubt I've covered everything, but thank you. Councillor Keller, MP.
I've never been in favor of the tiered system, and I think it has to be fair to everybody. And the fact that, from what I'm hearing, and I may be wrong, and Mr. Greathead can correct me, but with the campgrounds and that, they have all new infrastructure out there, and if they're not metered watered like people in town, and the outside OCAs are not metered like our residents in town, because we have infrastructure out there too, they're using our sewer treatment plant. I think it has to be fair. And again, you know, I get having connections and some fees for that, but I am not in favor of the tier system. Again, you know, our business community pay a lot in taxes, and to put this on top of them again, especially in the year of COVID, I don't think they're going to make it. I think we got to be careful. I think we got to be fair to everybody.
Deputy Mayor, if I can clear one thing up on that, Councillor MP's comment there. I misspoke earlier. Whistler has its own water supply system, so they have their own well, but they do use our sewage line. So that's something, you know, and that's based off the mathematical formula I mentioned about the number of campers per night. And then their per campsite, I believe it works out to 110 liters per campsite is the formula that's currently in place. So that's, I just wanted to clarify that issue.
Well, that's great. I actually thought Whistler's had its own water system, and then when I heard otherwise, I was taken aback. So that's great. Thanks for clarifying that. And it's certainly easier to understand why sewer would be based on some sort of a formulation. Metering sewer is certainly not common. Councillor Demota, were you?
Yeah, I was just curious to that water line that does go in that direction over Highway 16 and or under Highway 16. Is that to help the water functions for the tramway, or if Whistler's has its own water line, what's the purpose of that water line going across the road? The one that was recently metered that we were discussing.
Deputy Mayor, to speak to Councillor Ramota's question. Yeah, that one that goes across the like at the tracks, we put up like a plastic shelter over top of the meter this year, pretty much across from the Home Hardware area parking lot, and those ones feed the resorts that are on 93A. So that predominantly takes care of like Takara, Alpine Village, and those sites.
Right. Okay. I apologize. I thought you were talking about a water line that was on the other side of Connaught, going across the highway, and that's why I had that in my head. We had a new meter over there. So thank you for clarifying that.
There's, if I can speak to that, there's a ton of gaps too that we're still gathering information on. trying to, you know, figure out where our outlet sources are on our distribution system. So we've been narrowing down on those areas, and it's something we've been looking at, you know, pretty thoroughly over the last year.
Thanks, Mr. Greathead. Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler, and thank you for your comments that have elicited exactly the sort of debate that I think is healthy for council. I just wanted to observe from my perspective, if we have twin goals, particular related to the water utility, if those twin goals are both conservation and equity, then the tiered model still provides real opportunity. And that's why I'm interested in establishing the model, but with the opportunity for floating rates. And we don't have to have a model that is tiered at these particular thresholds. So 35 cubic meters, 100 cubic meters, 500 cubic meters, and so on. It would not be impossible, and I think probably not really difficult, to design a tiered system where there is an increase, so that's equitable, for every cubic meter or every cubic meter of water that you take in. And you could average, say, if you wanted to use the first 35 cubic meters, average the cost beginning at a lower end and going a little higher, but so that the first 35 on average is going to still cost the current rate, 141. But you just start somewhere lower and you gradually increase. And that way, every single user is incentivized, I think, to conserve, because the more they use, the more they pay. And there's not a threshold at 35 cubic meters. So it's a model that I think has real promise for both equity and for conservation. And we could use this opportunity this year to start. And again, if we wanted to set a maximum additional revenue flow of $500,000, we could design the numbers to achieve that. But we could still build equity and conservation into this model. We'd have to adjust it a bit, but it provides that opportunity. And that's why I'm in favor of using this opportunity. I agree with the other comments of Councillor Butler that it is time we had this discussion, and it's difficult that it comes in the midst of COVID. But there are principles at stake here that we could still attach ourselves to and let them progress over the ensuing years and new councils. But there's an opportunity, I think, that we should not miss.
You know, Mayor Ireland, I agree with you completely. And I think we can have a tiered model that is equitable. I think we can be very creative, and we can. Sorry, Councillor Janot, did I overlook you?
That's okay. Go ahead. I do have a comment, question, but go ahead.
All right. I think we can have a tiered model that is equitable. I think we can have a tiered model that subjects a single family home to tiering, which encourages conservation, and subjects, say, a hotel to tiering, and subjects an apartment building to tiering, based on the number of units in those three examples. I think it could be done. It would take some creativity and some discussion and some open conversation in front of the community. And my concern is that I don't think we can accomplish that between now and the 15th of December. But I have a feeling that you and I are really on the same page. And I've been thinking quite a lot about it, but I don't want to get it down into the mechanics of it here, where we need in the near term to make that decision. So I'm certainly not against tiering, as long as I felt that it was really applicable to every individual user, whether that's an apartment in a larger apartment building, or a duplex, or a single family home, or a hotel. I think it's possible. It might be a little more complex, but nothing that I couldn't envision being worked out on the spreadsheet. So I'm wondering if we can look at something in the nature of option 1A or 1B, depending on councillors' on council's tolerance for an overall increase. And that is what administration is asking for here. I'm detecting in principle, generally, that people are on side with the, what would we call it, the sizing according to connection size. And maybe we can get through a decision that gets us on the way and then use the coming months in 2021 to develop some kind of more equitable tiered system that we could apply and scale up over coming years. Of course, that would involve upcoming councils and we can't help that, but that would get us maybe over a few years up to the kind of levels of input into the system that Mr. Greathead has advised is needed. Though I do still think that part of that conversation should be whether some of that financial input, whether all of that financial input comes from the utilities side of the budget or whether some of it is more fairly placed at the taxation level. So, Mr. Greathead, if you're responding to that, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor General.
Ms. Malinchuk had something to add on to that. She just had a point she'd like to make.
Thank you. I can't see Ms. Malinchuk, so I have no way of knowing that. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry, I unmuted myself. I wasn't sure if you saw that or not, but yeah, so I I heard what you said in the last meeting about apartments and being that they're all residentially classed within the apartment and potentially charged more individually as potentially single family units. So I looked into this further and we can classify apartments differently so that they would be under a rate like the so the meter size would still be classified as per normal for the meter size. However, when we classify the consumption, it can be broken down to the amount of apartments broken within the dwelling. So I just thought I would clarify that I heard that concern and I looked into it further and I did not have the opportunity to speak to it earlier. So that's it for that. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. It points me again in the direction that I think we can come up with an equitable consumption-based system. It probably just takes us some time. Councillor Janot, sorry, I didn't mean to put you up. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's not a problem. Thank you very much. I would just add, just like to suggest maybe that for the large users, which would be primarily the commercial properties, the hotels and so on and so forth, we might adjust the sewage rate because a lot of the water they use would be the water lawns, which is not going to the sewage. So in order to alleviate the big cost for them, that might be one thing to look at as a suggestion. You may have already calculated that, I'm not sure. But I do support the tiering system with the view of conserving. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're all bad habit users of water, and I'm sure that the monetary incentive is one way to reduce the consumption. Thank you.
Mr. Grayhead, go ahead, please.
As an alternative, if I'm trying to, you know, I understand that council does see the value in having a consumption-based model work towards conservation. So even if we were able to adopt the rate structure in either 1A or 1B and have the tiers built into them, but the tiers for this year stay static, so there is no rate break. That could be a solution. So if we're going to go that method, I would recommend, you know, I'm still leaning towards option 1B, you know, the $1 million mark. I think we need to start approaching this with some seriousness and a bit of an urgency. Just looking at it from my as we're trying to forecast of what we're going to need to keep this town running, you know, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years down the road, and make sure that we're future-proof. I myself am an advocate for the tiered system with a view towards conservation, just because the larger users do impact the flow significantly for the overall system, and I'd say somewhat disproportionately. So currently we have new developments that are going online, just even to be able to do a modeling on what our sewer capacities and water capacities are. We're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars just to even be able to have that and ascertain that information, to be able to confidently approve or disapprove a new construction going into our infrastructure, tying into our system. So maybe if there is a hybridization of option 1B and the tiers just being static for 1 year, if that's amenable to council, that's something we can work on, and we can adjust as we need to. Review it annually, see how we're making out, seeing if it's meeting our needs. And I believe that by having the tiering in there, the commercial property owners will look a little with a lens more diligently if there's an understanding that not fixing our toilets and allowing those kind of leakages and wasted water to be accounted for. I think they'd have a view towards it and have a chance to modernize or put in water saving fixtures or do those methods. I think that might be a fair way of getting through this. And anecdotally, I just want to say that there was one property that our crew visited this year for a small water leak, is what the building owner had complained about. Now, the water leak was before the meter, and it had been leaking, just after the meter, but it had been leaking so much that it had actually cut a hole in like a little slit into the concrete of the footing of the building. So we do have just unchecked loss, and if there was some sort of incentivization for property owners to maintain their buildings better and be careful of the wastage, I think we'd be in a better position overall.
Well, I definitely agree with the sentiment and the principles there. What I hope today, we have to give direction to administration, and I'm wondering if it's reasonable today to give Mr. Greathead the first part of what is being asked for, which is a commitment to a overall amount of additional revenue that we would be looking at. And I'm wondering if council is amenable to trying to come to some conclusion on that. I think Mr. Greathead is proposing that for this year, at least, he would be satisfied to not use a tiered consumption model, or perhaps, not to split hairs, a tiered consumption model, but with no tiering within it, with a static charge. What's the view around the table as to the sort of $500,000 amount of additional revenue in option 1A and the sort of $1 million amount in option 1B? Councillor Wilson.
I haven't said too much or anything at all, but I would lean towards the larger number. I think B would be the $1 million. I think we're being told by administration that we do have to make the move soon, and uncomfortable as it is, I think, and I think we should be taking the larger amount to set ourselves up for future years. So I would lean towards the $1 million, and I'm assuming, is that, sorry, the 1B? I'm not looking at it.
That's how I'm seeing it, yes. Okay. Councillor Keller-Hempy.
I agree that the $500,000 is a little light. I think the $1 million is a little high. I'd like to see somewhere in the middle. If we went around 750 starting.
Well, hearing nothing more, go ahead, Mayor Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Butler, and sorry for the pause, but I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want to say. But based on the discussions last night at the first of the two public budget meetings, we were given some indication of just what our shortfall is in terms of transfers to reserves for infrastructure in particular needs that we know are going to come, and we are woefully deficient. And I recognize that this is a difficult time to start putting away savings, but we know that they are urgently needed. So although I could accept, I suppose, Councillor Keller-Hempe's compromise suggestion, I'm tempted initially to align with Councillor Wilson. I mean, even at $1 million, I think Mr. Greathead is telling us that's a serious start, but it's not nearly enough. And I think it is time for a serious start. So I would support Mr. Greathead's rationale on that and Councillor Wilson's comments in that regard. But I could be persuaded to align with others if I hear further arguments from others.
Well, seeing nothing more, I think that's the best I'm going to be able to offer, Mr. Greathead, in terms of direction for you. So I might suggest that for purposes of discussion, that you consider bringing back something like option 1B. Frankly, I'm basing that on a little bit of an even weighing of my little straw poll here. I have two councillors saying they'd be comfortable there, including Mayor Ireland. One saying they would be comfortable with somewhere in the middle, and myself saying I'd be comfortable at the $500,000. So I can't tell you what to expect in terms of the reception, but of course it would only be a request for decision with a draft motion, and that motion could of course be adjusted, and that's the way we do things. But you need direction, and you need to come back with something that looks like a proposed a draft motion. What I might suggest, and this is just me at the moment, but I think it would be really helpful if we had, sorry, I've lost my video. I don't know if I've lost audio. There. If for the public, if a motion like that was to be proposed, that we have a little bit of a before and after illustration of what a few model water bills would look like now as compared to after that motion was passed. And I'm hesitant to suggest a lot of work, but you know, if we could just have an illustration of what a some sort of an average single family water bill might look like, and some sort of an average heavy commercial user's water bill might look like. Because if we go to something like option 1B, we're changing two things. We're going with base billing by meter size, which is new and will have an impact, and we would be raising the consumption rates from 141 to 171 and 232 to 262. Though I suggest that even that changes the ratio that Mayor Ireland was talking about, so you might want to adjust that a little. But I think that when the public are looking at this, they're going to be asking themselves, well, what is that going to look like on my bill? And maybe we can have some clarity where we could allow people to, you know, just as they do with their tax, with the tax bylaw, they can look at their assessment and know how that's going to, their tax assessment, and know how that's going to impact them. Maybe we could provide enough information that somebody could look at their previous water bills and say, okay, what's my water bill going to look like after this? So I don't know if that's a lot to ask between now and next week. And I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I'm struggling to provide some illustration that the public will find resonates with them in terms of how they themselves will be impacted. Mayor,
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I agree that something sort of visual for the public is beneficial. They can understand better what the impact will be. I just wanted to say that with respect to models, although the discussion has been principally around 1B, I still maintain, and this is just a personal preference, a model that actually does incorporate some level of tiering, even if every tier is exactly the same, just to accentuate the point that we see some benefit in tiering, even though we need to grapple with how that is configured. So if I look at option 2A again, which has tiering, and that's, I presume that the average there is the same as, well, a little bit less than 1B, because 1B produces just over $1 million and 2A produces just over 900,000. And so if we had something that looked like 2A with tiers that were all exactly the same, that average, say that 165, it would produce a number around 900,000. But to me, that number is less important than the principle that we can achieve equity over time by adopting a model that has tiering in it. And my concern with 1B is that it doesn't demonstrate any commitment to tiering, whereas 2A does, and we can just adjust the numbers.
well, I see your point. My problem there is that the way the tiering applies is that I'm back to if you are one of the vast disproportionate number of individual users who fall in the 0 to 35 range, then that model lets you off the hook. And if we're going to encourage consumption, we have to encourage consumption with everyone. And if we can find a way of committing to the concept of tiering and informing the community that we are likely to be going down that road without embedding a model that has that fundamental detraction that I'm so concerned about, I'd be in support. So I just mentioned that's how I would probably, like I'd like to see tiering that works on a per unit basis, whether it's a hotel unit or a business unit or an apartment unit or a single family home. We all need to conserve, whether we're small users or large users. We all use the system. We all need the system. We all have to pay our part, and we all have to do our part to conserve. And I guess I'd like to find a model that somehow communicates all those fundamental principles. But I don't, administration can certainly bring a model like that forward and we can discuss it further. Mr. Greathead, did I see you waving? Did you want to weigh in before I move on?
Deputy Mayor, I think myself and Ms. Malinchuk have been paying attention. I think we know where to go for next week's meeting for the RFD, and we'll further refine what we've learned from today's meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. Long conversation, an important and necessary one, and that's why we have committee of the whole, to get all this stuff out there. So I will, with that, then move us on to item 8.2, restricted reserve information report. And Mrs. Malinchuk, I assume you will provide some narrative to go along with the written material you've provided.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So at the last meeting where we were discussing reserves, it was brought up that maybe council would like to hear also a year-end estimate. So that has been adjusted. Or a year to date even. So at the moment, the year to date numbers are as listed in the first column at 6.7 million. However, there's estimated 2020 year-end transfers of 1.9. So, or you can also consider it as allocated. So they're going towards committed capital projects that are in works. So for an estimated 2020 year end, we would be sitting at a near 8 million. So that seems like a very large number. However, going forward into the next year and looking at the next capital request for the 2021 year, it is not. And that can be seen in the package about the budget that's found online. And again, I just attached as well the comparison between the 2019 to the 21 requested figures and what that increase might look like from 2019, as that's how we're discussing the budget going forward, and what is considered part and parcel of the tax base and what amount was part and parcel of the utility base. Now, and that's for the 21 requested or talked about figures going forward. So in, again, a nutshell, that is what the reserves are sitting at. If there's any further questions or any more clarification, I know that it was brought up in last night's budget meeting as well. So we might be able to adjust the package that's online to include this as well. However, it is on the agendas or every time that it does come out for discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, councillors. Questions or comments? I have a couple of questions just to clarify, Mrs. Malinchuk. So I'm looking at the page entitled Reserve Contribution Information. So if I understand, I'm looking at the boxes on the right. 2021, just over $1 million. It says tax base, and 2021, $1.1 million utility base. So those would be the contributions to reserve funds for the coming year. I'd like to know in both of those cases, based on what assumptions. So my assumption would be, and correct me, that for 2021, if we go with the $1.429 million tax requisition, and if we were to accept the budget as proposed, we would contribute just over $1 million to reserves this year. Is that part of my thinking correct?
Sorry, may I ask a question? Did you say on the budget or the tax requisition, did you say 1.4 or are you speaking to 8.4?
Well, as is true, most of the time I don't really know what I said, but I certainly meant to say the 8.4.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So yes, so on the discussions of the 8.4 tax request, so the option one with going off of 2019 plus non-discretionary costs and also reserve increases, we'd be looking at these figures increasing. So 2021, the contribution, if approved in the budget that we're speaking about, would be 2.1 in that year going towards the reserves from the operating budget, yes. And so the increases from the 2019 year would equate to the 671. And as you can see, because we were talking about the utilities today, in those amounts right now sits almost 200 increase in water and almost, or just over 300 in sewer sanitation. So that is, those can change ultimately based on conversations going forward about how the funds would be allocated within the budget as well.
Okay, thanks. So that leads me to just my second question for clarity. So the $1,118,850, that notionally would go into reserves from the utility part of the budget. What of the models that we're looking at, what would that be based on? Would that be based on one of those models that we looked at, 1A, 1B, 2A? Because there must be some assumptions built into that number too.
Deputy Mayor, so there is considerations with all of them. 1A is just giving additional reserves and no staffing or additional requests that will be talked about on Wednesday's meeting considered. And then option, sorry, I have to scroll back. 1B and 2A, being that they're closer to that million, would support going forward in either contributing more to the reserves or contributing the same amount to reserves, and also considering the requests of service levels requirements in staffing and whatnot. And you will be more within the budget process. I think it'll become more clear in seeing the numbers come forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Juneau.
Yes, thank you. This is a bit of an aside question, but that's what committee is for. So when I look at the list of reserves, I went to our financial statement to see where they are. And I assume they're in the cash of $19 million. And I sort of like wondering why they were never broken down. And you can follow from one year to the next how our reserves going on the balance sheet. So I just recently finished taking a municipal finance course. Just it was a four session, and they mentioned that those items should be in our financial statement. Okay, I guess our accountant is not doing it. It's probably not required, but they're saying they should be. So if council or the public likes to see them, they should be included. So that's a comment for the side. But when I looked at the report that you provided in sheet, well, the first one, I immediately went to the financial statement, and of course they're not there. The other thing that was mentioned in this course, this is totally secondary, but there's a comment that Mayor Ireland made last night about the breakdown of our expenditures by sector. In other words, wages, utilities, and so on and so forth. And they also recommended or suggested that that be included in the report, whether it's an attachment to table or whatever. But those are the two things. So it's a bit of an aside to this, but I think we have to make sure that we relate things to the financial data, which is the one that we ultimately are responsible for. Thank you.
Ms. Melanchuk, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to respond?
Thank you very much. So when we're talking about the breakdown of, and I'm sorry, my computer's frozen up, so I'm going to be shuffling through the financial statements here. So on schedule 4 of the financial statements, I'd like to point out that there is a schedule of segmented disclosure. So this is broken down by those types that you speak of, Councillor Journeau. So breaking down the revenue by, say, taxes or sales or rentals or investments or penalties and such. Expenses could go into your salaries or your materials, goods and supplies, as well as contracted services and so on. And then when we talk to restricted reserves, I might have to flip some more. And I don't know if I'm going to find it right away. I like having PDFs to be able to just type the word into. I might look a bit more, and if I might be able to come back to highlight where those are highlighted within the financial statements.
That'd be great. Thank you. You can even communicate by email to me after the meeting if that's more convenient. Thanks.
Sure. Yes.
All right. That's valuable. Thank you. Mayor Ireland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Through you to Mrs. Melanchuk, because we've been discussing that page on our agenda that is labeled reserve contribution information, and you were just speaking in response to Councillor Journeau about items on the financial statement that deal with restricted reserves. I would benefit, and I hope some members of the public would benefit from, again, an explanation, and I know we went through this to some extent a couple of weeks ago at a meeting. That particular page on our agenda refers variously to restricted funds, reserves, cap auto, and I think you confirmed that they all mean essentially the same. But it is the word restricted that connotes something different. And I would just like some clarity over whether and to what extent our reserves are restricted. So if we have reserves in utilities, are they restricted to expenditures in utilities? Council appears to have had some inclination to take from reserves for specific spending, just to make ends meet if we must, given that revenues are down. But if reserves are in fact restricted for particular purposes, it's important to communicate that. And I'm not entirely sure whether restricted means what it would normally mean, and whether it differs between the particular reserves, or is it simply a word that we should drop from our vocabulary and simply talk about reserves in the sense that they are savings and not necessarily to be spent conditionally.
Deputy Mayor, through to your worship, there are unrestricted and then restricted for operating and restricted for capitals. Now, these are what I would like to discuss further in a policy discussion. I have wanted to dive into our reserve policy for 5 years now. This is how much time I have to get to policy level, which is unfortunate. But it's very important that we discuss how the money is allocated. And I believe that our policy is too vague at the moment. And I believe that the conversation should be had as to how they are set up and put away and for what. And in my principles, in looking at if a reserve is contributed to through the operating to a capital reserve through, say, water, that it should go towards water, because that is the user that is contributing towards that commodity. So in principle, that is how I look at it, but I would like to clarify that in a policy statement for sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that response, and I welcome that dive into the reserve when we have that opportunity, but I appreciate there are all sorts of other challenges to deal with. But thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'd just like to pick up on that if I could, not seeing any other hands, because I kind of had the same question. So I want to use an example. So I see that at the end of 2020, it's estimated that there would be $436,000 sitting in the Parking Authority restricted reserve. So given that, Ms. Melanchuk, that you said that the policy is a little vague, I assume therefore that through resolution of council, that council could, if it felt it appropriate, take $300,000 of that and direct it toward a skate park, because it felt that a skate park was kind of like a parking lot and that was just a good idea to do, and that there wasn't really anything in policy that would prevent us from doing that right now. Is that, to choose a little bit of a silly example, is that really the case, that all of those reserves can be used for whatever purpose is deemed appropriate at the discretion of council, as you see it right now?
Deputy Mayor, with that example, the Parking Authority does have a very specific policy So that one, not necessarily I would use in in that context. But given, council can make decisions and allocate funds in which direction they would like to see them go, then obviously then that is an option. But I would the policy is pretty specific in that parking authority. Quite lengthy,
Well,
yeah.
Interesting that I chose that example then. So that's in a way an example that has some policy framework around it. And you're suggesting that you would recommend greater policy framework around some or all of the other reserve funds as well, to clearly indicate how that money is intended to be used.
Exactly. However, as you stated, anything can be done through resolution of council.
Sure, thanks very much. But policy is important because councils tend not to attempt to overcome policy through resolution. It does change the level of that conversation. If there's policy, council is less likely to, or any given council, I think, is less likely to contravene policy than it is to act otherwise. So your point is well taken, for me at least.
Yeah.
Anything else on this from council? Good, thanks. I had asked for this with the assent of council, and I find it really valuable to finalize our budget conversations coming up. It's 10 after 12. I'm just looking at our agenda. My proposal is that we deal with 8.3, which probably takes us around to about 12:30. We do have additional matters to go through, and I'm wondering what is the will of council. At 12:30, we'd be at another hour-and-a-half increment. I could propose a lunch break, or would you rather that we attempt to get ourselves past item 10, which is the bulk of the public matters on the agenda, and then take a break and then come back for our closed session? Could I just have a quick sense of what council would like to do? And I'm trying to be mindful of administration, who are also missing lunch at this point.
I will have to leave by 1, but that's just Monday.
I think we should continue, get as much done as.
All right, I will just carry on, and if someone feels it's time to call a break, then just let me know. Otherwise, I will just move forward. So we're at item 8.3, COVID-related staff increases in operations, and I think Mr. Greathead, you will run us through that one.
Yes, Deputy Mayor. This request is for us to be able to hire 3 operators to make sure that we have a bit of a buffer to maintain essential services in the event that we're impacted by COVID. I believe it's relevant to point out right now that 3 of the directors of the municipality have been declared close contacts with people. So 3 of us are isolating from home, and I believe that we're at 6 for the total of the municipality currently. So we're really worried about being able to keep the the garbage trucks going, the sidewalks shoveled, maintained, and just our essential core services. We anticipate to be able to spend a fair bit of the money from the most grant to cover this term hire, and we're proposing a term hire as opposed to casuals. That just gives us more reliability and availability with staff. They know that they're here for a period of time, and as opposed to a happenstance kind of occupation. And then we would also be able to make sure that we have a minimum level of training for these people. Now, I believe that if the most grant is not extended in 2021, the upset to the municipality will be about $64,000 if we're not able to have further funding on that. But it's one of those situations where we look at it logically, and we could just be decimated at any time and not be able to keep up. Right now, Mr. Hutton, his acting director, issued new orders, or actually reaffirmed old orders of how we do business within the operations department. So we segment everybody by the job kind of classification. We make sure that staff have their assigned vehicles that they go to. If they don't need to report to work, they don't need to, they don't need to come into the office. We've set up a couple no-go zones where we're just not supposed to be mingling, controlled at both ends. And like the utilities department, they're working separately and isolated from the general operations crew as well. So this is just a way of making sure that we have that resilience built into us in case we get significantly impacted at ops.
Thanks, Mr. Greathead. Council? Questions? Well, I have a couple. Mr. Greathead, for sure. I completely appreciate the problem. My first question is just around the background information you gave. And honestly, I'm just asking because I'm wondering how alarmed I should be to hear that in October, when we had relatively few active cases in Jasper, your department incurred over 300 hours of sick time in 1 month. Because if I assume approximately 40-hour work weeks, that looks to me like 2 people almost every day of the month off of work due to COVID. Is that how I'm meant to interpret that? I'm a little bit shocked to hear it, and really concerned about, is everybody okay?
Deputy Mayor, everyone's doing fine. We haven't had anything significant related to COVID hit our department. A lot of it is the precautionary and the required time. So we had the outbreak at the school. We have parents of school-age children that had to use some of their sick time to make sure that they were meeting the protocols and that. So a lot of it is the requirements, and when we're advised that we're close contact pending, if somebody's got symptoms until they're tested, that's going against the sick time. So we are significantly notice the reduction in staff. It's getting a little harder to keep up, but I feel that's just the nature of the world these days.
Sure. So a lot of it is just requirement to isolate.
Yes.
Yeah. So then I guess my other question is, I completely see the rationale, but I wonder, I assume you just never know where this is, that gap is going to open up, whether it's a water operator or a garbage truck driver or where. So how feasible is it for term employees to be able to jump in and fill the gap? I wonder how you can do that, because it doesn't seem possible that any term employee could be readily able to fill any one of the number of roles that could all of a sudden turn up as needing filling. Do you have a plan to address that?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Ideally, it depends on the candidates that apply for the positions. So if we have, and we make sure that we, we're seeking, people that have a Class 3Q driver's license, so that they were able to operate the snowplow with some minimal training or haul snow away. There's quite a bit of talent out there that's not working currently these days, that have a lot of operating experience, that we may be able to assign them to do some of the work with the grounds, some of our smaller equipment, the power brooms and such, and just capacity for some manual labor as well. So I believe that there's a fair bit of talent out there available, skilled staff, and those are the ones that we will be looking to hire, because we understand that our ask here is just to support us functionally, and there's no point in us hiring somebody that will not be functional. So our intent is to hire skilled staff to complement our role, our crew right now. Sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, I said thank you very much, and then I said other questions from council. Mayor Ireland, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Through you to Mr. Greathead. I am quite prepared to support in principle the request that you've made. My question is support in principle sufficient? Do you need something more tangible other than sort of a nod of the head? And if so, what might that be? And do you in particular need council to approve something in the nature of a COVID contingency fund, hopefully funded mostly by most, but maybe by necessity from other sources? But do we need to position you, not just in principle, but with other supports, so that you can ensure that essential services can be maintained to the community, even in the event that we have members of our current staff out due to the variety of COVID reasons that you've indicated?
Deputy Mayor, to speak to the Mayor's question, I believe the council has set us up actually quite well to be able to deal with this. I remember Mr. Furcher was talking about the staff contingencies, namely caretaker staff and casual staff over at the Culture and Rec department. And it being, you know, if it's operationally needed, yes, let's go for it. Make sure that, we've committed to keeping these facilities open. But I am cautious of, making these decisions, making these moves, and not have the money, specifically earmarked aside, and planned for in the budget. So like this is definitely a reactive request for this RFD. It's definitely, we wouldn't be asking for this in a normal year. It's just, to make sure that we have capacity. I believe that our staff, we all understand that we will do what we do. There's going to be some reduction in services, some, latitude that we're going to need to exercise. But again, this is something, it could end up being a $64,000 liability by pursuing this for this group. And again, we're only asking this one as terms because we are looking to make sure that we have availability of some of the, people with the heavy equipment experience or the truck driving experience that we need. So it's a little bit different than I believe what your question is. Like I do believe that we're set up well to react to situations as they arise.
Mayor Ireland?
If I could, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just if I can go back to early in the meeting and channel Mr. Day, he made the reference, you can have a golf course, but you can't step on the grass and you can't have any balls. And so I want to make sure that we're not just approving in principle 3 6-month term positions, but you have no money to hire anybody. I mean, it's got to be support for the principle, but then support for implementation as well. But as long as you're comfortable that you have been sufficiently resourced, if we approve in principle, you can proceed. That's all I'm looking for. I just don't want to come back to this later and find out that we've approved in principle, but haven't actually done anything to facilitate what you need.
That's correct, sir. That's how I'm taking it as well. And I believe that we are supported. So further, there's going to be discussions going ahead tomorrow again with the operating capital. And there's going to be some, a little bit of this built into that, into the overall presentation for ops.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
I think most of my questions have been answered, but I guess what I was going to ask, I think you spoke to it though, are some of our summer operation staff available to fill these positions? I guess, you know, do we have term position or summer positions that are that have the skill set to fill some of these positions?
Deputy Mayor, to speak to Councillor Wilson's question, it would be a completely different hiring process just because of the QP contract and such. And I believe that our seasonal position, he's employed during the winter, so I'm not sure, but we would make sure to reach out to any of those people as well to let them know that, you know, there is a posting available and to bid on it. But it would be separate and apart from that staff, I would imagine.
All right, thank you for that. I think I don't see any more questions. I just wondered, Mr. Greathead, I understand the difficulties of relying on casual staff appointments, but I wondered, you know, in the best case scenario where you don't end up having a lot of gaps to fill, are you confident that 3 full-time term positions can be well utilized in other areas? Will it be cost effective if, as we hope, that people aren't needing to miss work?
Deputy Mayor, there's no shortage of work. It's always a little mountain we're chipping away at daily. There's always stuff that we just haven't got done that we always mean to get around to. Yeah, anyone that we hire will definitely be gainfully employed and put to work.
Great, thank you. Anything further on that item, Council? All right, thank you very much. Then I guess we're not actually seeing an RFD come forward that's going to be wrapped into the budget conversations. Correct, Mr. Greathead?
I believe that we can make that happen. I think this can just be, you know, facilitated administratively.
Yep. All right. Very good. So agenda item number 9, other new business. Councillors, is there new business to be brought forward? Going once, twice, we're done. Item 10, correspondence. We have 2 letters, one relating to the parking contribution from the Olive Bistro and Lounge. Have it in front of you. I invite any comments or queries of administration around that. Well, seeing nothing, I will speak to it. I am very sympathetic toward the issue raised here. We, during last year, and we seem to be able, setting ourselves up to repeat it this coming year, we allowed people to use public space to expand their businesses out on the street with good reason. My concern from the beginning was, it still remains, the equity there, because some businesses are simply not functionally really able to take very good advantage. It really comes down to where on the street you are, what street you are on, how much street frontage you have as to how much you can take advantage of that. And I think we have an example here of someone who was pretty limited with respect to how they could take advantage of it. And then decides to use some of their own parking space and incurs a really pretty significant fee. And I understand the reason for the fee, but it doesn't seem fair. Where in particular, directly up the street, another business operating a bar closes their entire parking area. And we don't say anything about that. It's not fair and equitable. I think that something can be done here. I understand that if somebody expands their deck into their parking space for the long term, that we have a bylaw that requires them to pay into the parking fund. But it seems if that is being done as a COVID measure, that we should be able to offer a little more equity. And I am, of course, unable to direct anything on this, but I wonder if council has any thoughts as to whether this is something we should address, or if council feels we should not, and if not, well, so be it. But I did want to raise it. Councillor Keller MP.
I agree. I think we need to be fair. As you said, another business have allowed their full parking lot, and we allowed that. We also have allowed businesses to have restaurants both outside their business and take their parking stall at no expense. I think we should allow this.
I wonder if, go ahead.
This summer, I have been to this business, and the patio, like as in all restaurants, people want it to be outside, and they have the parking where they can expand, and it's not going to interfere with anybody. And there's a parking lot across the street. If somebody at the hotel there needs to park, can park there. There's many hotels in our town that has no parking, and they're not charged extra. So I think it's only fair that we allow this business in the upcoming year because of COVID to expand.
Thanks, Councillor Keller MP. Councillor Wilson.
Does anybody know the fee in which we charge for public use of, or for use of public space? So per stall that we've been letting businesses for the last season operate on the street? I think Mr. Greathead probably.
Mr. Greathead.
I believe that the charge was $100 for the permit application fee and $25 per seat.
Is there something we can, is there something we can work out, whereas they're paying the same, they're in a situation where they can't operate on the street, but they're operating something very similar, and they should be treated the same. So maybe we charge them the same rate in which so per seat, how many seats are they going to have on their expanded patio? If there's something there we can kind of look into.
My only caution on that, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Wilson, is that the letter is referencing a permanent, like a full-time installation, as opposed to the sidewalk seating pilot project that was initiated last year was a temporary measure. So that's the differentiating factor in this one.
Yeah, I could see that this could be a temporary measure at this point as well, if they wanted to move forward with the project. And we can kind of work with them on that in years to come. I don't know. I think there must be some flexibility on their end as well.
It seems to me, to Councillor Wilson's point, unless somebody else wants to speak at this point, that in essence, it could be that we're dealing with maybe really a straight up request for deferral. We've deferred a number of, or provided a number of opportunities for deferrals. And I wonder if it would be fair to defer the parking authority contribution until after COVID. And then if the proprietor wishes, or the lessor wishes to keep the space, then I think that that parking authority contribution would have to become due and would have to be dealt with at that point. But if it is really just an expansion into parking area for purposes of COVID for the coming year, or if we go ahead and expand and continue to allow sidewalk seating and taking up parking spaces, then it seems to me that it would be fair to allow somebody who is able to use some of their own parking in that same way to allow them that same benefit. But if it were to become permanent, then I think we can't just overlook the parking authority payment. So that would be my suggestion. I'm not sure if council were to agree how we would accomplish that, whether we would do so through a motion to direct administration at a regular meeting or what. Mayor Harland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. Using your words, I am tempted to defer the discussion until I am more comfortable with some of the facts. And the issue raised by Councillor Wilson, I think, is critical, certainly whether this is a permanent installation or not. But the real issue, as I see it, is that council addressed private use of public land. This is a different use of private land. And it becomes a development issue, which to some extent is beyond our jurisdiction in any event. So what if it was slightly different? And I do understand that there's a separate problem of equity here, not just generalized equity within the community, but another operation down the street, apparently doing something similar and not coming up against the same obstacle. And I would like to find out why one was treated differently than the other. But it is a development issue. And suppose that instead of using the parking lot, someone had come and said, well, I want to build patio seating on my rooftop, and I don't want to add any additional parking as every other business in the community has done. And before we decide on equity in this situation, I want to take a broader look at where we stand. And so I have sympathy for the applicant here, but there are some other issues that address equity throughout the community, and they relate more to the development aspect of this, which is out of our hands, except to the extent that we collect the parking fee, where people who develop cannot meet their parking requirement on site. They're required to pay to our fund, and that's why we have that $436,000 in that reserve. But they're, I think, more complicated than just saying, yeah, this sounds fair. So I would appreciate an opportunity to get a fuller picture of the facts and then make a decision based on incorporating these other aspects of the issue. And I would really like to find out why one outlet in the community apparently received different treatment than another.
Councillor Demota.
Well, I don't know necessarily if it was different treatment. I think that if we look at the business that's writing the letter, if they were to choose to zone off a parking stall and put a picnic table there with an umbrella as a temporary structure for the year, I think they would have got the same treatment. We're talking about a permanent addition to an extension here, whereas the other business in question up the road, it was just a fenced off area with tables added to the parking lot. So not an extension on a permanent structure. So I think that's a little bit of where it varies. But I'm definitely interested in having the conversation and looking at overall equity within the community and understanding that parking a little more. I know within that particular building itself that there are a lot of different dynamics with different rental spaces in there. And I don't know from Parks Canada or the parking authority what that parking is assigned to, because there is a hotel there, a convenience store, and then some apartments. So, if there is a parking stall assigned to that particular business for the restaurant, then, we can definitely have some conversations there. And yeah, I'd like to look a little deeper into it and understand it a little bit more. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And for my part, I'm certainly happy to wait and gain more information. But for the record, my suggestion relative to deferral is only to attempt to provide an opportunity and some equity during the time of COVID. And the point in deferral is if the structure were to remain as a permanent structure, then the parking authority contribution, I think, would unavoidably have to become due. And the proponent would have to make their decision on that basis if it was felt to not be, worth their while to put it in place for one season and wasn't prepared to pay into the parking authority if it was to be permanent. Well, then that's where I would leave off trying to intervene. So it seems to me that a simple one-year deferral is a thought, but I do agree with waiting until we have a little more information. And I don't think a few weeks one way or the other is likely to make a huge difference, but I'm happy to see the conversation here because these are important discussions when we come to these questions of private use of public space. And now this isn't really public space, except it is a little bit because it's parking. So happy to see us come back to this. We have another letter on the record. If there's no further comments on that. Oh, sorry. Councillor Demota, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, I think that there was a recent request when the Jasper downtown hostel was established, and we dealt with some parking questions there. And I know that there was an ask, and we had to work with them to make something happen over there. And I can't remember what direction it went in, but I think there's some recent precedent there and maybe an opportunity to review. I don't recall exactly what transpired or what the outcome was, but there might be a recent reference there.
Councillor Keller.
Just to answer Councillor Demota's question, that was in a public parking lot. It was the parking lot beside Source for Sports. And the request was that we would designate stalls there for the hostel, downtown hostel, and we chose not to do that. It wasn't their own private parking.
Deputy Mayor Butler, I just want to point out that Mr. Huckelick is on the line, and if there was an opportunity to ask clarifying questions, they've been in attendance and they've now promoted to panelists. So just putting that up there.
Well, thank you. It's committee. We can be fairly open. What is the will of council on that? We normally, I think, expect letters to speak for themselves. So I would ask for a little guidance from council as to what your wishes would be in this regard. Please unmute and jump in at will.
Councillor Butler, Deputy Mayor Butler would be inclined to ask the letter writer, if he's been present, particularly if he's been present all morning, if he wants to respond to anything that's been raised, I would make that invitation myself.
Thanks, Your Worship. I appreciate that guidance, as I found myself suddenly not quite sure how to respond. So, Mr. Huckelick, if you're here, I see a little square on my screen indicating you're there. So unmute and speak if you would care to. Thank you. You will need to unmute, Daryl. I could see you're unmuted, but if you're speaking, we can't hear you, Daryl. Well, it doesn't seem to be working. Oh, Mr. Huckelick, are you there? No, that was Mr. Juno. All right, well, not wanting to hold up the meeting, if admin is sorry? Oh, if admin is able to help Mr. Huckelick to be able to speak, then please do so. Otherwise, Mr. Huckelick, you could certainly communicate with any councillor or by council collectively by email, and I would invite you to do so. Thank you. I will go ahead and move on to the next agenda item and ask for any comments on the letter from Jasper Senior Society. Mayor Ireland, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. I'm just curious, and as our representative on Evergreens, you are probably conversant with this more than most. So have we in fact received the reference request from Evergreens? If we have, it's no longer in the recesses of my memory.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Yes, we did. We had at a meeting a few weeks ago, we had a presentation from Mrs. Chambers, CEO of Evergreens, and I think also Mr. Tassoni was in, and they requested a $10,000 annual. So the first 10,000 of an annual contribution, currently estimated at $10,000, to ensure that the bus service that Evergreens has taken over from the Jasper Senior Society, I hope we all remember at least a bit of that conversation, so that service can be made available to the broad residency of Jasper and not only to residents and tenants of Evergreens. So, yes, we did, and it was a request for $10,000.
Thank you for that. I was confident that you would have that answer, and I'm going to assume that was September 20th, because I know that is a meeting that I missed for other reasons. So thank you.
I believe you're probably correct. Well, in the face of deafening silence, I will speak again, absolutely in support of this initiative, or of this request. I think we really have no choice. We have to do our part. It's a really valuable service. I think we all acknowledge that it's not a service used by a tremendous number of people. There are people who need the service a lot. And Evergreens, I have to say, and I should acknowledge, I wear two hats in this because I do sit on the board of Evergreens as vice chair, but Evergreens stepped up and agreed to take on the bus from the Senior Society, inherited the old bus from the Senior Society, raised a ton of money to buy a new bus, and wishes more than anything to continue offering the service, not only to their own residents, but to seniors and others in Jasper who have mobility issues. Weekly trips to Hinton, weekly trips to various activities like going to Lake Annette or these sorts of things. And it's really impressive the way it's worked. And I hesitate to say it on the public record, but I'm amazed at how little the ask is. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. But I think we have money in our budget. I think there is money within the CFS budget to do this. We can find the money. And I know there's a lot of competing asks, but it's little enough and a pretty important piece. So I have only that to say at this point. Councillor Keller, MP.
I support this initiative. I was kind of under the understanding that it might come tomorrow night in the budget under FCS. Just when it came forward, I kind of at that time felt council was in agreement with it, and I'll be honest, I was just expecting it tomorrow night, and that's where I was hoping to see it. And if not, then I feel like you that we'll have to find it somewhere in somebody's budget, or just put it in as an outside ask and incorporate it into the budgets going forward.
Sure, and I think the intent of the Senior Society is just to make sure the conversation is still alive. Councillor Journeau, thank you, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to indicate that I support this. You can see the the activities that they use the bus for social recreationing and sightseeing for the seniors, taking them on trips and so on and so forth. So as mentioned by Councillor Butler or Deputy Mayor Butler, we have to do our share in this. So I get my support behind.
Councillor Demoto, were you waving or just thumbs upping? Might be important to mention that the $10,000 is certainly not the only contribution from community. EGF does charge for community members to use the service, and I think they charge what they feel they honestly can. So this is a supplementary amount. It's not the full amount for non-Evergreens community members to use. All right, looks like we've put that one to bed. Sorry, I've lost my agenda. I think, here we are. That concludes correspondence. If there's nothing further, are there any reports from councillors on representation on boards and upcoming meetings? Councillor Keller, MP.
Over the next 2 days, as Chair of Community Futures, I will be participating in the Alberta Economic Development Conference by Zoom. And next week, we as Community Futures have deferred our strat planning and until January due to COVID.
I will mention that the Jasper Community Housing Corporation had a great meeting last Friday, and thank you to Councillor Wilson for attending and your great contribution, also Councillor McGrath and Mr. Greathead. And we are proceeding with every effort to move forward with the Connaught Drive housing project, and in fact are exploring a newly revealed grant program from the federal government called the Federal Rapid Housing Initiative. And so we have directed our consultant to reposition the Connaught Drive housing project in part in an effort to apply for what, if it were successful, would be a very substantial grant, potentially funding 80% of phase 1 of that housing project. Would mean kind of reconceiving the project to a point, though not in terms of design, but I thought I would report that. The other thing, I'll just take this opportunity to report, and Ms. Nadon, if you're listening, rather suddenly the board is in need of 2 new community representatives. That board is comprised of 5 voting members, 2 of which are members drawn from the community at large. One of those 2 members recently resigned, and the other has indicated that he thinks it's time that he resign due to the fact that he has been sitting on the board for longer than board bylaws actually allow, which I am thankful for, but he has indicated he feels it would be appropriate to move forward, and the board members have agreed that that being his will and according to bylaws, we should do so. So we are saying goodbye to Elizabeth Prince, who has found the time that her life has changed and time commitment is untenable. And she has already departed the board, and Chad Gulovich would like to be replaced soon. So unfortunately, this missed the opportunity to address through our organizational meeting. But Ms. Nadon, if you could consider what sort of direction you would need from either council or council as the shareholders, meeting as shareholders, and then we can, I believe the protocol is to run some ads and look at applicants. And perhaps you could come back to us next week and let us know what's required in that regard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Butler. This is a bit of of a different one because, as you've mentioned, there's board bylaws and items that are a bit separate from our usual boards and committees. So certainly we can have a look at that. And we have recruited in the past, so we also have some history there on how we proceeded, and we can provide council an update. Thanks.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. And that's all I have. Anyone else for council reports? Very good. We have only one upcoming event noted: public budget presentations conducted through Zoom. Second presentation of 2 will be tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Public is welcome and encouraged to watch and then to submit following that requests for further information or comments by email. Instructions for doing so are on the website. Are there any other events or that council would like to bring attention to? Seeing nothing, then I will entertain a motion to move into camera. Before that, I see that motion from Councillor Junot. Thank you. I think I can safely tell any public who are tuning in that we will conduct no further business when we come out of camera. We will come out of camera simply to adjourn. Do I have a general nod of heads from council that that is the expectation? Very good. Yep. So I think we can save the public from sitting and waiting as I know they would otherwise do, with bated breath, wondering what to expect when we come back into session. So Councillor Junot has moved that we move into camera. There being no discussion, all in favor? Thank you. So we're in closed session, and I will call a recess for how long would council like? Is half an hour adequate? Yes, thumbs up. Half an hour. So I have 12:57. I will give you 33 minutes because I'm in a generous frame of mind, and we'll come back at 1:30 on this. Ms. Byrne, on this Zoom link, or remind me what we're doing in that regard.
I'll make a new one because this one would still be live to anyone who wanted to pop in.
Sure.
So.
Thank you very much if you would do that. And so we will reconvene at 1:30 on a new Zoom link and in camera. And thank you, everyone. And thank you to all members of public and media who attended today. We appreciate your presence. Thank you.
Sorry, is Mr. Greathead trying to get your attention?
I just wanted to mention to Kayla to please invite Gord Hutton on the new Zoom link, please. He's got something that we need to discuss.
No way.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.